Chapter 601. The unilateral trampling and annihilation of the Whitebeard pirates may sound alarmist and appalling, but it is an undeniable fact. The world government is not as bad as imagined, and the Whitebeard pirates are not as powerful as imagined. So far, the only one who can fight in the Whitebeard pirates is the old Whitebeard. Everyone else is a rising star in the future, but they are still young and there is no one who can deal with the Marine Admiral level. On the other hand, the other pirates, Big Imam, 100 Beast Kaido, and Red Hair Shanks, although these people are not as good as Whitebeard, they are younger, especially Red Hair, who is only in his 30s, and there is still the possibility of infinite progress in the future. 100 Beast Kaido and Big Imam are also younger than Whitebeard by 10 or even 20 years. Now Whitebeard's body is also going downhill, and it is getting worse day by day. Looking at it, there is almost no one who can support the Whitebeard pirates in the future. Thinking of this, Whitebeard felt sad and lonely. Even if Old Tiger's power is still there, one day his feet will step on the ground and his deterrence will disappear. At that time, the Whitebeard pirates will become food in the hands of countless jackals and wolves. "Father, aren't you a bit alarmist?" Marco whispered as he carefully approached Whitebeard. At the same time, he handed a large jar of white wine to Whitebeard. Hearing this, Whitebeard just glanced at Marco and didn't speak. He took the wine handed to him and poured it into his mouth. It seemed that this was the only way to relieve the depression in his heart. His beloved son had been killed, but he could only watch helplessly. It was easy to imagine how he felt. It's not that Whitebeard is afraid of death, but as a captain he can't lead the entire pirate regiment into the tiger's den. Compared with the world government's headquarters like Mariehua, the marine headquarters is like a good wolf's den, and Mariehua hides all kinds of prehistoric beasts, enough to easily tear apart a hungry wolf. Alarmist? I also hope that I am sentimental. With a sigh, Whitebeard said hopefully. If time can go back, he will not listen to Roger's inside story. In fact, sometimes ignorance is also a kind of happiness. If he could, how he wished that he did not know some truths and was still the old Whitebeard. It was all that damn Roger's fault for telling him the truth. This caused him to become hesitant in everything he did. He had to consider the consequences of everything he did. Especially when this was only the strength of the world government. Behind the scenes, the celestial dragons who control the world are low-key lurking in the dark, invisible big hands covering the world. Even the highest power in the world is just their lackey. Of course, these dogs were occasionally disobedient, and sometimes they would do things against the will of the celestial dragons. In fact, this was human nature. Once their wings had hardened, no one was willing to continue doing things without saying anything. The 5 honored stars were also ambitious people. It was obviously impossible for them to be silent lackeys for the rest of their lives. Are you referring to celestial dragons? With a flash of understanding in his eyes, Marco asked absurdly. It is well known that the celestial dragons are a group of idiots, and they are not even as good as normal human beings. Whitebeard didn't want to say more. These people are still too young and immature. Knowing some secrets will only make them feel desperate and lose their ambition. The celestial dragons are all idiots. What means did they use to unify the world 800 years ago? In today's world, what means did they use to make the 5 honored stars willing to crawl? Whitebeard is too lazy to explain these unknown secrets. If they know more, they may lose their motivation. In that case, the gains are not worth the losses. Throughout the New World, as well as throughout the 4 seas, people are talking about the new Marine Admiral. His reputation is also very different. Some people think that he is worthy of the name. After all, there are pictures in the newspaper of Dustless defeating the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates with overwhelming strength. Similarly, some people think that this is Marine's face. The reason is that Dustless is too young, he is only in his early 20s, but he became an admiral of the Marine. Although he is an honorary admiral, it is difficult to accept that he has no power. After a few days of bumpy sailing, Dustless and Garp finally arrived at their destination, the Marine headquarters, Marlin. The only thing that disappointed Dustless was that the old guy Whitebeard understood the meaning of watching the fire on the other side of the river. He led the entire Whitebeard pirates back to the island where they were originally stationed, and the hatred of Surd's fall was left behind. There is still a long time in the future, and Whitebeard also knows the simple truth that it is not too late for revenge. In the office that belongs to the Admiral, Dustless stood in front of the window, overlooking the Marlin surrounded by battleships. Below there are countless Marines carrying out the necessary daily training. The one who trained the new recruits was the retired General Z. What is the movement of the dark fruit? Dustless whispered in the empty room. A dark shadow stepped out of the darkness. It was White Zetsu, who was all white. He reported truthfully, It is still in the hands of Bigumam, but I am afraid it will not be long before it will be eaten by the subordinates. White Zetsu's face was very ugly. This is the strongest fruit he has tried his best to find. Now that it has fallen into the hands of Bigumam, this is a disguised enemy. That's for the best. Go and tell Hawkeye to try his best to retrieve the dark fruit. Otherwise, find a suitable opportunity to secretly kill the person who ate the dark fruit. A cold light flashed in his eyes as Dustless ordered expressionlessly. No matter who it is, he can't let Bigumam and Whitebeard benefit. Dustless's carefully planned trap will be in vain and become meaningless. White Zetsu nodded and then found the dark corner again and disappeared into the depths of the ground like a ghost. Chapter 602. It's too late to weaken the Whitebeard pirates and the Bigumam pirates. Dustless won't improve their overall strength in a disguised way. This is tantamount to digging his own grave. The whole world is so big. The second half of the new world is almost in the shadow of the Jianghu 4 emperors. If he wants to establish a foothold in the new world, the first thing to bear the brunt of is the pressure from the Jianghu 4 emperors. Only by dealing with them can he be at ease to dominate the world. Knock knock knock. While pondering, there was a sudden knock on the door and Dustless's thoughts were pulled back. Come in. Creak. The door was gently pushed open, and a tall, strong man with a white face and a handsome appearance appeared in front of him. He gave people the feeling of sunshine, confident and gentle. But what makes Dustless most concerned is that he actually knows this person. Your name is Smoker? Glancing at him, Dustless asked calmly. Smoker was stunned when he heard the words and his face showed a surprised expression. He was flattered. He didn't expect Dustless to know him. Now he is just a basic soldier. He has no rights. He is just a cannon fodder in the war. Dustless, on the other hand, was a serious general. The difference between them was like heaven and earth. Recognizing him at a glance, Smoker's feelings were abnormally strange. Exactly. He raised his chest and saluted. His tone was neither servile nor overbearing. It was vigorous and loud. His figure was tall and straight like a javelin. His heroic spirit flourished and he had an imposing appearance. This guy is a talent. It is not impossible for him to become an admiral in the future. Seeing this, Dustless gave him an appreciative look. People can't be arrogant, but they can be proud. Smoker is young, but he can do this very well. Take it. Throwing the devil fruit with strange lines to Smoker, Dustless explained, this is Logia's smoke fruit. After eating it, the host can turn into smoke. You are lucky. This is what Garp and I encountered a pirate group on the way back. Smoker's eyes widened. He didn't expect to meet Dustless for the first time and give him such a valuable gift. The Logia devil fruit was priceless. It was priceless. You might not even be able to buy it with money. There's no need to thank me. This devil fruit is just a burden in my hands. It can't be used. Besides, it was Vice Admiral Garp who robbed it. It should belong to the Marines. Dustless said indifferently. The ability of the smoke fruit is good, but Dustless has no use for it, not to mention that this is only temporarily given to him by Garp. Now that he has given it to the Marine, it can be considered as returning it to its rightful owner. What did you call me here for? Dustless asked as his gaze fell on Smoker's face. His sluggish eyes quickly converged and Smoker sorted out his thoughts. Sengoku wants to see you. As for the reason, speaking of this, Smoker's tone stopped. Now he is just a small soldier, and he is still too far away from spying on the confidential identity of the Marines' high-level officials. The weasel paying a New Year's greeting to the chicken is not good. I guess it's about Doflamingo. After thinking for a few seconds, Dustless secretly guessed and faintly understood the intentions of Sengoku. Among his forces, only Doflamingo, a mad dog, is stirring up trouble everywhere. There is no wall in the world that doesn't leak, and the chance of deceiving the world without anyone knowing is zero. In particular, Doflamingo used the bird cage on the entire Dressrosa, but even so, Sengoku is not qualified to interrupt. Shichibukai can plunder the world and not be wanted by the Marine, which is guaranteed by the 5 Mariehua. Suddenly finding Dustless, it is estimated that he wants to stop Doflamingo's actions from him. Knock knock knock. A dull knock on the door sounded. Sengoku raised his eyebrows slightly and immediately said, "The door is not locked, come in." Raising his eyes, he saw Dustless. Sengoku's old face suddenly flashed with surprise. He didn't expect Dustless to be so rule-abiding. At first, he thought that Dustless would break the door like Garp. After all, Dustless's strength is not lower than his, and his status is not lower than his. Overall, his data completely beat Sengoku, and he can be so rule-abiding is completely giving him face. Dustless's next sentence suddenly made Sengoku's slightly smiling old face collapse. His face was full of bitterness and wonder, and his heart was replaced by a haze. After you became the fleet admiral, the four seas were calm, and the new world's imposing pirates made peace. The recent Jianghu four emperors also quietly retired. The name of Fleet Admiral Sengoku has spread to all corners of the world, and the world is talking about it. Dustless's compliment did not make Sengoku happy, but his face was gloomy. During his promotion to the Fleet Admiral, Impel Down was exploited one after another, and the same was true for the Marine headquarters. The most fatal was the recent emergence of the deformed organization, Shichibukai. All of this has brought his reputation as a fleet admiral to the peak. Of course, it's not a song but a curse. Every day the citizens who have been tortured by the war of pirates scolded him, and some even directly raised several grades in succession. Sengoku was too lazy to scold him, and he gloriously expressed his condolences to his family. Sengoku also pinched his nose and recognized all this. He had to admit that this era is definitely the most chaotic era in history. Everywhere in the four seas, the Jianghu four emperors are rampant, and the admirals of the marine headquarters are in a state of fault. As a last resort, the evil organization Shichibukai was established to suppress pirates with evil. In addition, and in front of him, the celestial dragons who are currently extremely powerful and eat both black and white, Roy South. His head hurts, his chest hurts, and his whole body hurts. When he thought of it, Sengoku was speechless for a while, and his heart was full of resentment. It was obvious that the enemy was in front of him, but he could only endure it. Not only that, but he also had to squeeze out a smile to accompany him. He could only eat losses. He was often slapped in the face by the man in front of him. The depression in his heart can be imagined. The Gorosei, 5 elder stars, often called and scolded him, which made Sengoku's spirit collapse, but he could only suffer in silence. Chapter 603. It's no wonder that Sengoku is so gloomy. The enemy is close at hand, but he is helpless. Instead, he is full of smiles, for fear of angering the celestial dragon in front of him and releasing the mad dog Doflamingo to harm the world. Not to mention the powerful aura of the celestial dragon, now there is the identity of 7 warlords of the sea, and his master Dustless secretly protects him. There is really no one who dares to trouble Doflamingo. This kid is now free and unfettered. The only one who can restrain him is Dustless. Of course, after Doflamingo committed crimes, in the end, the black pot always needs to be carried by someone else. The bitter candidate is only Sengoku. It's no wonder that the marshal can't lift his head in front of Dustless. Doflamingo the mad dog is a big guillotine. If you have something to say, just say it. Dustless's words made Sengoku see hope and his face was full of joy. But before Sengoku could be happy, Dustless's sudden words once again put him in the 18th layer of hell. Listen or not, it depends on my mood. Dustless shrugged and smiled casually. Sengoku's face turned red when he heard this, and his lips trembled with anger. Dustless's playful eyes made him twitch all over, and his forehead was full of black lines. It's really uncomfortable to be hit head-on like this, but he can only endure it. For a while he even wondered whether he should talk to Dustless. This is no different from asking for humiliation. After taking a few deep breaths, Sengoku calmed down. Doflamingo has blocked Dressrosa. His ability is quite strange. Den Mushi can't communicate with the outside world. It is no different from the closed dead island. It has become an independent world. Sengoku said worriedly. Since knowing the identity of Doflamingo's Tenryubito, Sengoku knew what his intentions were. Taking advantage of the situation to take back the throne that was given hundreds of years ago. The marshal means? Dustless asked calmly as he sat on the sofa. The cells in his mind accelerated, and in just a few seconds he guessed Sengoku's intention. At the moment he just shook his head disapprovingly. If he wants Doflamingo to give up his dream, it's better to cut him with a knife. This was unrealistic and unscientific. If I'm not wrong, his goal should be Dressrosa's throne. I hope you can stop him. His awe-inspiring eyes fell on Dustless, and Sengoku said in a deep voice, he is now one of the 7 warlords of the sea, and King Dressrosa is useless to him. He is an evil pirate, and I am a righteous marine. How can I stop this? I'm not familiar with him, and we're sworn enemies. Dustless chose to be perfunctory and play dumb. Dustless was the mastermind behind the scenes who encouraged Doflamingo to seize Dressrosa. Now it was impossible for him to ask Doflamingo to give up the cooked duck. It would be a pity to let it fly in vain. As for the royal family of Rico, Go play with the mud where it's cool. You, Sengoku's pupils widened when he heard this, and he looked at Dustless incredulously. He didn't expect Dustless to be so shameless. Doflamingo was not known to everyone, but Marine's high-level officials and Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, knew it clearly. Opening his mouth to refute Dustless, Fleet Admiral Sengoku suddenly found that he was speechless. To catch a thief, everything must be paid attention to the real evidence. Although he was convinced that Doflamingo was Dustless's dog, there was no substantial evidence to prove it. Moreover, falsely accusing a celestial dragon is not a small crime. Even if Dustless quibbles, Sengoku can't argue. He can only stare. Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, will not be bored enough to testify for him. It's obviously nonsense, but it makes people speechless. This guy is shameless. Sengoku asked himself that he had never seen such a shameless person. Although Whitebeard was barbaric and unreasonable, at least everyone could retaliate. With Dustless, this rule that everyone abides by is invalid. Only he can play at will. The most terrible thing is that he can't fight back, he can only passively take the moves. I think, looking at Sengoku, Dustless said, everything has two sides. Although Doflamingo's strong invasion has brought great losses to Dressrosa, there is also a positive and optimistic side. Dressrosa is the second stop to enter the New World. After entering the New World, most pirates will come to this island to resupply equipment and provisions, as well as some necessities for sea navigation. Therefore, the public security is extremely chaotic. Pirates, big and small, are constantly coming in and out. The so-called Liku royal family is just a laughing stock. They are regarded as heir by those powerful pirates. After the pirates landed on the island, they naturally began to rob. The weak people can only be slaughtered. The so-called fairy tale world is just based on humiliation. Perhaps many flamingos sitting on the king of Dressrosa will do no good, but at least pirate robbery can be effectively eliminated. No one dares to ignore the existence of Shichibukai, a super fighting force. About half an hour later, Dustless took a sip of tea and slowly finished this long paragraph. This is also, seeing that Dustless was going to talk nonsense again, Sengoku's mouth was twitching, and he was speechless by Dustless's rhetoric. In the end, he had to admit that this was an undeniable fact. Even if his heart was extremely uncomfortable, he had to admire Dustless's eloquence. It was obviously a reversal of facts, but Sengoku could not find a reason to refute Dustless's point of view. As Dustless said, it was because of the soft rule of the Liku royal family, which also led to the naivety of the local islanders. When facing pirates, they showed their weak side and were oppressed. In the face of the new King Doflamingo, of course, they dare not be presumptuous. Unlike the weak Liku royal family, Doflamingo, a bloody butcher, is the kind of person who advocates violence. He is not interested in soft prey. The more they resist, the more it arouses Doflamingo's interest. Unlike other pirates, as long as he can destroy the world, it doesn't matter what he does. Chapter 604. It's no wonder that Sengoku couldn't refute it. In this world, there are only two kinds of people, either they are exploited or they exploit others. It's as simple as that. Seeing that Dustless didn't let go, Sengoku knew that the plan to prevent Doflamingo from becoming the king of Dressrosa had failed. The plan he had been brewing for several days went bankrupt because of Dustless's insistence. As one of the 7 warlords of the sea, he has to cooperate with Marine's combat staff. Just arrange Marine personnel near Dressrosa. Fleet Admiral Sengoku took a step back with hope on his face. But he was destined to be disappointed this time. Why is Dustless so troublesome to hide from Marine and the world government? He needs a quiet environment to create a peerless weapon like Pluton. Dustless can never agree with Sengoku. I'm a Marine, he's a pirate. If you think Doflamingo will agree, you can ask him. Sengoku, time flies, and in a blink of an eye, several days passed. Dustless's big ship sailed rapidly on the sea, setting off huge ripples that extended rapidly, and the water ripples swallowed the surrounding sea. On the deck, Dustless leisurely basked in the sun and enjoyed his afternoon tea. Sengoku, that old guy wants to keep me as a laborer, no way. Dustless proudly picked up the fruit in the delicate plate and stuffed it into his mouth. After hearing what Garp had done, Sengoku wanted to keep him in the Marine headquarters. In case Dustless came, this initiator would be an excellent fighting force. However, to his disappointment, the Whitebeard pirates not only did not move, but they also left and returned to the island where they were originally stationed in the New World, as if nothing had happened. Sengoku's view of Whitebeard has also changed. In his impression, The big thief who couldn't rub sand in his eyes and would seek revenge for the slightest flaw was temporarily as well behaved as a sheep. His sharp teeth and claws that could tear together were all restrained. Rumble. The den mushy on the table suddenly rang, and it was Hawkeye who called. "Has the dark fruit been taken back?" Before Hawkeye could speak, Dustless asked first. Hawkeye shook his head. "I was a step too late. When I arrived at the scene, only the skin of the devil fruit was left. The fruit in his mouth was sprayed out." Wuxia was stunned for a while. When did Hawkeye become so humorous? After thinking of the person who ate the dark fruit, a chill flashed in his eyes. He asked calmly, "Don't worry, we just have to kill that person?" But then again, Bai Gu Mamu is willing to give the dark fruit to someone else. Who is it that she likes? The dark fruit was not something that could be found on the streets. In the past, even a flame fruit could cause countless pirates to fight over it. It went without saying that the dark fruit, which was dozens of times more precious than it, would cause a huge commotion. Therefore, the user must also be a confidant of Baigu's mother. A guy named Baranegi. His strength is quite good. He is slightly stronger than the average Marine Vice Admiral. He is also very young. The most important thing is that he is a loyal dog of Bai Gu Mamu. Hawkeye said bluntly. Bai Gu Mamu's men are different from others. Strength is secondary. The key is loyalty. The Bai Gu Mamu pirates have more than 5 people who are stronger than Baranegi, but they are all ambitious. Maybe the dark fruit will be given to them in the next moment. The next second, a cold light flashed and a big sword cut towards Bai Gu Mamu. This kind of thing can be found everywhere in the cruel sea of the second half of the Grand Line. Kill the guy named Baranegi so that even if he eats the dark fruit, it won't help. In the end, the Bigumam pirates are still drawing water with a bamboo basket. His eyes were cold. Dustless said coldly. What can be chosen by Bai Gu Mamu to welcome him is not heaven, but a cold and gloomy hell. It's just a small matter. Hearing this, Hawkeye confidently replied. This is extremely simple for him. He can easily kill Baranegi in just a few rounds. At that time, a new dark fruit will be born in some corner of the world. In the end, the final winner is Dustless. Whether it is Whitebeard or Bai Gu Mamu, they were all severely cheated once. Compared with the Whitebeard pirates, the Bai Gu Mamu pirates were much more miserable. More than 30% of the combatants were annihilated and Bai Gu Mamu herself was seriously injured. Although she also injured Whitebeard, she suffered more than Whitebeard in his prime. The title of the strongest man in the world, even Whitebeard will accompany him in the future, not to mention that he is still in the golden stage. When Whitebeard and Bai Gu Mamu fought, the Bai Gu Mamu pirates were doomed to be defeated. Due to Dustless's calculations, the New World's Jianghu 4 emperors were hit hard. The Whitebeard pirates were the most intact. Although their combat power has declined, they still maintain their original state. The only thing that is worrying is that in the battle with Bai Gu Mamu, Whitebeard himself was inevitably injured. His body is not as good as before. The battle with Bai Gu Mamu was almost a battle of killing 1,000 enemies and losing 800 of his own men. As for the other 3 emperors, their fate was even more miserable. The Kaido pirates were hit by Dustless's Tensei Seismamai, and only a few elites in the entire fleet survived. Next is the Bai Gu Mamu pirates, who were lucky by the Whitebeard pirates and could only retreat in embarrassment. As for the Akagami Red Hair pirates, they received special treatment from Dustless and were the most miserable of the Jianghu 4 emperors. Especially the Vice-Captain Beckman, who also carried the notoriety of killing each other, quietly withdrew from the New World and is currently active in East Blue. Anyone who wants to join a group of cannibalistic pirates has to think carefully. Although Beckman was framed by Dustless, the photos that cannot be quibbled have spread throughout the New World. Chapter 605. A few days later, under the connivance of Dustless and the indifference of the Marines, there was no doubt that Doflamingo easily seized the position of the King of Dressrosa and regained the throne that belonged to the Don Quixote family hundreds of years ago. The incident also came to an end. Caesar also secretly lurked in Dressrosa from the island of the New World. A large number of materials collected before to build Pluton were also transported to Dressrosa through various secret channels. After removing the bird cage, Dressrosa was already in ruins. Smoke and beacons were burning everywhere. The usually clean streets were covered with blood stains and corpses were piled up like a mountain. It was like purgatory on earth, disgusting and nauseating. In addition, Dressrosa also had countless toys for free. Although the scene was extremely bloody and depressing, the indigenous people living in Dressrosa all regarded Doflamingo as a god and their eyes were full of respect. Just as Dustless told him about the plan, Doflamingo used the ability of the string fruit to control King Riku and the Riku royal family's subordinates. They waved their blades and slaughtered the islanders. Doflamingo, who was used to being a villain, finally appeared in a righteous way to save the civilians who had sunk into the fire and water, gorgeously transformed into a savior. Red Hair Shanks's hatred for Dustless was deep in his bone marrow and penetrated his soul. How could he let go of the Black Hand who caused him to lose the New World and had to return to East Blue to recuperate? For Red Hair Shanks, who valued his companions, Dustless took away everything including his dignity. His friend Hawkeye Mihawk was instigated by Dustless. Beckman carried the notoriety of killing each other. The members of the former Akagami, Red Hair, pirates were all dead and they were forced to withdraw from the New World. Among the Yonko, 4 emperors, he was undoubtedly the one who hated Dustless the most. He couldn't wait to eat his flesh and drink his blood. Shanks, don't worry about it. Fame and fortune are nothing to a pirate. It doesn't matter to me whether I'm infamous or famous. Somewhere in East Blue, the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates stopped here. Beckman stared at the unwilling Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks and comforted him with a calm tone. Even though he wanted nothing more than to tear Dustless to shreds in his heart, he still had to endure at this moment. Hearing this, the red-haired Shanks clenched his fists even tighter, his knuckles cracking. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. The more Beckman behaved like this, the more he felt helpless and guilty. If he had defeated Dustless, he would not have ended up like this. Speaking of which, I heard that the next town is called Windmill Village. It is related to the Navy's hero, Garp. I heard that his grandson was adopted by the people in that town. Seeing Red Hair Shanks so obsessed with Dustless, Beckman changed the topic, hoping to divert his attention. Otherwise, Dustless might become Red Hair Shanks' nightmare. He had lost his adventurous spirit and was like a walking corpse that only lived for revenge. Garp? Hearing this, Red Hair Shanks' empty eyes regained their luster. His face flashed with surprise. In the Marine, he and Garp barely had some friendship. Unfortunately, due to the different positions of the two sides, they abandoned their prejudices against each other and may become drinking buddies. You mean Garp's grandson was adopted? Red Hair Shanks' eyes flashed and his gloomy expression disappeared. Beckman nodded slightly and immediately his face was strange. Garp's grandson was called Monkey D. Luffy, but the kid didn't seem to know who his grandfather was and always mixed with bandits. He also has a brother called Portkas D. Ace and a kid named Sabo who grew up with him. Looking at the red-haired Shanks, Beckman truthfully reported that because he was afraid of the Marines' ambush, before he came to Windmill Village, he had already sent people to inquire about the situation of the village, and by chance he heard about the deeds of Monkey D. Luffy and his 2 companions. Suddenly realizing something, Beckman said, "Shanks, you don't want to. How can I have such a dirty idea? I don't care about the life of a kid." Waving his hand to interrupt Beckman, Shanks took off the straw hat on his head and looked at it deeply. The reluctance in his eyes disappeared and his hesitation turned into determination. Beckman's expression was stiff and he had already guessed the intention of Red Hair. He was about to persuade him to give up the absurd idea when Red Hair Shanks' voice sounded. Captain Roger once said that D's will has a great relationship with that race. Tenryubito is called God, and D's will is the natural enemy of God. You might as well gamble, Beckman. For Dustless, Red Hair Shanks knew that he was not his opponent. Even if he fought for a lifetime, he may not be his opponent. He could only choose a powerful successor and gamble him in the next era. There is a D in the name, and he is the grandson of Marine hero Vice Admiral Garp. This is the most suitable. If Garp knows that I trained his grandson to be a pirate, his expression will be wonderful. In the dark, Red Hair Shanks seemed to have seen Garp gnashing his teeth in the future. Red Hair Shanks laughed heartily and his previous depression was swept away and he was restored to his usual optimistic appearance. Seeing this scene, Beckman opened his mouth but didn't speak. He shook his head helplessly and a relieved smile appeared on his face. As a pirate, you have to be straightforward. Being fearless is the true nature of a pirate. Little did he know that this scene was seen by White Zetsu hidden in the dense jungle. It's a good plan, but unfortunately, it's just your wishful thinking, Red Hair Shanks. Glancing contemptuously at red-haired Shanks who was laughing boldly, White Zetsu's face was full of disdain. He snorted disdainfully at red-haired Shanks. The human heart was something difficult to control. Dustless may not be able to control it completely, let alone red-haired Shanks. hard work and perseverance were praiseworthy, but there were some people that even Xiongqi would never be able to surpass in his entire life. This huge gap was not something that could be easily bridged, especially when he was counting on a little brat. Chapter 606. It was no wonder that White Zetsu was so disdainful of red hair. That straw hat had an extraordinary meaning. It had already become a spiritual symbol. Red Hair Shanks suddenly used it as a wager, hoping to defeat Dustless in the next era. It was simply a fantasy. It is undeniable that the will of the last D may really be able to defeat the celestial dragons, but Dustless belongs to this category alone. Red Hair Shanks' ridiculous bet is meaningless. But this guy is really shameless. He actually chose Garp's grandson. I'm afraid that the guy will be furious when he finds out that his most valued grandson went to become a pirate. White Jew frowned and had a deeper understanding of the shamelessness of the red-haired Shanks. This is deliberately provoking the relationship between them. White Zetsu couldn't help but look at Red Hair Shanks. This guy clearly knows that Luffy is Garp's grandson, but he deliberately does this. There are very few people with the will of D in their name, but they are not rare. In the New World, people with D in their name can occasionally be heard making waves. Whiz, whiz. While he was deep in thought, two black shadows whizzed over. White Zetsu was stunned. Seeing the shadows coming from afar, he hurriedly dove down, but it was too late. His arms were already clamped down by a powerful hand. You should be helping that guy collect information. No wonder he can predict the future every time. A guy like you is really a master of collecting information. A dull whisper sounded in White Zetsu's ears. Looking up, it was Red Hair Shanks and his deputy captain Ben Beckman. Both of their hands grabbed White Zetsu's arms at the same time and subdued him. Damn, I was careless. His eyes stayed on the two and White Zetsu scolded. Thanks to Dustless, Red Hair Shanks is now in a very awkward situation, but he is also one of the Yonko, 4 emperors. The 3 colors of Haki, Armament Haki, Haoshiku, Kenbenshoku, have reached the peak and his strength should not be underestimated. Spit out the information you have inquired in the past and I will let you live. Looking down at White Zetsu without emotion, Beckman said coldly. Hearing this, White Zetsu sneered again and again, and his eyes were replaced by sarcasm. Spit out information? Wishful thinking. He was created by Dustless. How could he betray him? In addition, according to the hatred of the Akagami, red hair, pirates for Dustless, even if they reveal information they will be killed. You two are just dabblers, yet you want to defeat Master Dustless. You're Red Hair Shanks, one of the 4 emperors. I think you're more like a child who hasn't woken up yet. White Zu, who was determined not to speak, mocked them. Since they were going to die anyway, he might as well take the opportunity to mock them and collect some interest. Red-haired Shanks's eyebrows immediately turned gloomy. In the past, when he was ridiculed like this, or if it was someone else who ridiculed him, he would just laugh it off. But this time the target was Dustless. He couldn't let go of the grudge with a smile. It was impossible for him to treat the death of his beloved crew member as air. That is to say, you heard what we just talked about? Beckman asked coldly with his eyes narrowed. At the same time, he had already sentenced White Zu to death in his heart. He also hated Dustless very much, but as a vice-captain, everything must be solved rationally. If he relied on emotion alone, it was not impossible for red-haired Shanks to disappear long ago. Yes. Looking at Beckman's eyes, White Zu admitted frankly. These two people both hated Dustless to the bone. Most likely, even in their dreams, they wished that they could dismember him into 10,000 pieces to vent their anger. When they were captured, White Jew was already prepared to be killed. The will of D is the natural enemy of God? Maybe, people with D in their names may be able to overthrow the world in the future. This is not denied by White Zu. There are countless idiots in the celestial dragons. On the other hand, the people with D in their names are almost all dragons and phoenixes among men. I'm sorry, but my master is not in this category. You want to defeat him with D's nonsense fairy tale. It's just wishful thinking. It's ridiculous to use this to cover up your inner helplessness. White Zu loudly ridiculed, and the end result is just death. It's not a big deal. What evidence do you have to say that guy is special? Boom. His eyes flashed with anger. Red-haired Shanks grabbed White Zu and threw him on the tree, making a dull impact. Just a spy, a mouse that can't see the light, has such a good eloquence. That guy is surrounded by monsters. His eyes locked on White Zu. Red-haired Shanks' face was indifferent, and the sword in his hand was unsheathed. The sword was covered with a cold light and pointed at White Zu's head. He didn't expect that one day in the face of an insignificant pawn, he would feel speechless. Dustless Master is also a celestial dragon, but he is different from that group of garbage. I advise you to wash your neck and obediently stretch out your neck for punishment. With a strange smile on his mouth, White Zeus sneered. Dustless is an outsider. He does not belong to the world in front of him. In the eyes of Dustless, these people are just a group of ignorant indigenous people. It's that simple. Dee's will is the natural enemy of God. As a visitor from another world, Dustless is naturally not in this category. The ridiculous idea of relying on Dee's will to defeat the celestial dragon is just a strange strategy produced by red-haired Shanks out of powerlessness. Pucci. The cold light passed through White Zeus' body and easily divided him into two. The unknown sword in his hand was skillful and cut iron like mud. At first glance it was not an ordinary thing. Do you need to change to an island? Looking at White Zeus who was killed, Beckman suggested. Dustless's subordinates were all strange and unpredictable people. Whether it was their ability or strength, it was beyond imagination. Just like White Zetsu who was spying for information, no one would have thought that there was such a strange existence in the world. No need, he has been killed and the information can't be passed out. Looking at White Zeus' body, red-haired Shanks turned and left indifferently. He had made up his mind to lead Luffy to the path of pirates, and it was impossible for him to leave Windmill Town in a short time. It seems that I am too proud. About half an hour later, White Zeus emerged from the ground. The reason why he was locked by red-haired Shanks and Beckman was that he deliberately exposed his breath. Chapter 607. Mariehua. Compared to the red-haired Shanks, Dustless in the spacious luxury villa was like a god. Hancock rubbed her legs and from time to time, she passed 2 sparkling grapes to Dustless's mouth. The days were extremely comfortable. After a while, Dustless seemed to be aware of something special. His lazy eyes opened and his dazed eyes became clear. He still had to distinguish between business and private matters. Young master, you. Hancock saw this scene and was slightly stunned. When she was about to withdraw, Dustless's lazy whisper sounded in her ears. "It's okay, continue." Hancock nodded gently, and then obediently rubbed Dustless's legs. About a few minutes later, White Zetsu emerged from the ground. Hancock was already used to this scene. White Zetsu always appeared in such a mysterious way. She was used to it. Dustless's people were so mysterious. About the time it took to burn a stick of incense, White Zetsu told Dustless all the moves of the red-haired Shanks. That brat's way of doing things is really vicious. Only he could think of such a vicious strategy of killing his grandson. Has he been forced to such a state? It's really hard on him, but this is not enough. Wu Qin said expressionlessly. His tone was calm. He had already expected this. A pirate is a pirate and ruthless is their portrayal. Red Hair Shanks is actually a butcher whose hands are stained with blood. In his career as a pirate, he has defeated many pirate groups. It is because of those pirate groups that he has today's sky-high bounty and the status of a hero. Don't think that a pirate is so kind. When they are forced into a desperate situation, they will often show the darkest and coldest side of their heart. Manchi D. Luffy, the grandson of Hero, Garp. Picking up the red liquid on the table, Dustless's face swept with a playful smile and then he drank it. There was still some red blood stains on the corner of his mouth. "Do you want to kill him now?" White Zetsu said coldly. The so-called him is naturally Garp's grandson Manchi D. Luffy. Hearing this, Wu Qin just glanced at Baizu faintly and then shook his head resolutely. He was just a little kid. The effect he could play was negligible. There was no need to worry about him. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. Let red-haired Shanks be defeated by the cruel reality. As for the so-called Dee's will, the legend of God's natural enemy. Although he wanted to suppress the ridicule in his heart, he couldn't control it. The corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled up as he sneered. There were countless legends in the world, but the probability of them turning into reality was 0. But that kid thinks he can be safe if he escapes to East Blue. Dustless's face was cold, and the goblet in his hand instantly shattered. A flawless vicious plan suddenly formed. Even if red-haired Shanks escapes to East Blue, Dustless will tear off his arm. Waving his hand, White Zetsu came over and listened carefully to Dustless's plan. After a moment of silence, White Zetsu's face was strange, and he looked at Dustless with suspicion. Unlike before, instead of saying that it was a detailed plan, it was better to say that he took advantage of the opportunity. What made White Zetsu speechless and unacceptable was that this time, the object of the use was a group of bandits. The dike of 1,000 miles collapses because of an ant's nest. The more unexpected the small character, the more likely it is to play a huge destructive role. Even if the enemy is a passerby, sometimes you need to be 120% alert. Seeing White Zetsu's suspicious eyes, Dustless explained. There were so many examples like this that they could be counted as the grains of sand in the Ganges. In the future, Whitebeard and red-haired Shanks fell because of this. At the beginning, Z was the same. Because he thought that Dustless was a celestial dragon, which was synonymous with idiot, he saved Fisher Tiger from the Fishman race. As a result, he was beaten by Dustless. Seeing Dustless's insistence, White Zetsu didn't dare to say more. After all, it was Dustless who created him. He gently nodded and chose to obey Dustless's order. Then he sank into the depths of the ground and his aura disappeared. Just like what Dustless said, the more easily overlooked a minor character would be, the more unparalleled and unimaginable the destructive force they would display. Master, why don't you just kill red-haired Shanks? Blinking her watery eyes, Hancock asked puzzledly. Her enchanting little face was filled with curiosity. Her clean and delicate facial features revealed her dimples that caused people to daydream. Combined with her fresh and refined temperament, it made people unable to extricate themselves from her. She was more dangerous than a deadly poison. If the toy is dead, what fun is there in life? No matter what, he won't be able to escape the curse of fate. Since he's so fond of playing the savior game, I'll play with him to my heart's content. Dustless glanced at Hancock, his eyes clear, and said, People like me hate people who think too highly of themselves. They can't face their own status. They always think that they are special and can do anything. I really don't know where he got this confidence from. Funny. At the beginning, Dustless didn't mean to fight against red-haired Shanks, but this kid repeatedly jumped out to destroy his plan. Especially the red-haired guy, Dustless was extremely tired of him. He always thought that God had arranged for him to be the savior of the world. He was omnipotent and could do everything easily. However, Wuxia had changed his fate and changed his identity as the savior of the world. He had changed his identity as the savior of the world into the role of a clown. Master is also bad enough. Hancock sighed, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was the consequence of offending Dustless. He thought that death was the end of it, but in reality he was gravely mistaken. He could neither live nor die. Only when the other party's spirit had collapsed would Dustless send him to heaven and throw himself into the embrace of God. Chapter 608. For Hancock's dumbfounded expression, Dustless just ignored it. Perhaps for Hancock, Dustless's ideas are too extreme and impersonal. Dustless never cares about what others think. Counting the world in front of him, Dustless, who has lived 3 lives, understands the truth of human nature better than Hancock. If you don't bully others, it doesn't mean that others won't bully you. Although Dustless is only 17 or 18 years old on the surface, Dustless, who has lived 3 lives, understands this truth better than anyone. The so-called dignity in the final analysis is fought with fists. Seeing Hancock's puzzled face, Dustless was too lazy to explain. After all, she has too little experience and doesn't understand the real indifference of human nature. Without his complicated life experience, it is difficult for Hancock to understand Dustless's pain. There are almost no people who can empathize with him. Master is right, but we can't be soft-hearted to the enemy. After a while, Hancock's face was firm and determined. In an instant, Hancock suddenly understood the meaning of Dustless. It's good that you can understand. Dustless chuckled. She closed her eyes comfortably and hummed happily. Over time, Hancock's massage skills improved by leaps and bounds, and she grasped it just right. The whole person was like floating in the clouds, and the nerves that were usually tense were relaxed and extraordinarily comfortable. Hancock's next sentence made Dustless helpless. If I had strong strength at the beginning, I wouldn't have been humiliated and captured by Mariehua. Hancock clenched her teeth and said indignantly. Dustless rolled his eyes when he heard the words, and these words were directed at him. He shook his head and didn't care about it. He also knew that Hancock's mistake was unintentional. It was true that if Hancock had strong strength at the beginning, she wouldn't have been kidnapped to Mariehua and become Dustless's slave. After following Dustless for a while, Hancock gradually realized the cruelty of reality. In this world, being weak is a sin, and the sky in the future is left to those who are prepared. Time passed quickly and a few hours slipped away quietly between the fingers. It was almost evening, and the sunset on the horizon covered the entire Mariehua, and the earth was covered with a layer of golden and fiery red morning glow, which was beautiful. Of course, ignoring the miserable screams, Mariehua's golden color is even more beautiful. Following Dustless, Hancock's pretty face was pale, and her beautiful eyes looked at the villas behind her with fear, and then looked at Dustless who was walking leisurely in front of her. She took a deep breath and patted her chest. If she hadn't met Dustless, Hancock might have been the same as those slaves now. She would have been bullied and oppressed by the celestial dragons every day and night, suffering all kinds of inhumane treatment until she was tortured to death. Thinking about it made her feel scared. Her eyes couldn't help but look at the other side of Mariehua, where the Gorasii, 5 elder stars, and the office of the world government are sacred and inviolable. People who pass by from time to time will show indescribable decency. Do you think it's very contradictory? Wu Chen's deep eyes fell on Hancock's face as he asked calmly. Hancock nodded in fear and then fell silent. Mariehua is indeed so contradictory. On one side is the office of the Gorasii, 5 elder stars, and many departments of the world government, sacred and righteous, while on the other side is the residence of the celestial dragons. They live in the old era and are extremely evil. Torturing slaves and other shameful things are as simple as eating and drinking here. In fact, Mariehua is the epitome of the world, and it is also deformed. Dustless whispered softly, and in fact the whole world works like this, not only Mariehua. No one can change everything. Let's go. Looking at Hancock's pale face, Dustless turned and left, and an unexpected figure suddenly entered his eyes. That guy, isn't that Borsellino, Kizaru? On the dock, Borsellino in a yellow striped suit came into sight, and Dustless said unexpectedly. Hesitating, Dustless walked over and Hancock followed. Kizaru, who is nearly 3 meters tall, has a bitter face, and his expression is sluggish as if he is seriously ill. His eyes are dark and from time to time he flashes a rare light. Obviously he is very upset. This is strange. Dustless's mouth raised a playful arc, and his pace was faster, and Hancock behind him also opened a distance. It is worth investigating what happened behind him that can make Kizaru show such an ugly expression. Kizaru's wretched old face drooped, and it was full of gloom as if someone robbed his money, and not only did he not return it, but also beat him up. Borsellino. The light voice entered his eyes, and Kizaru, who had his head down, looked up, and Dustless's figure came into view. Royce South, Saint. Kizaru's gloomy expression was swept away, and Kizaru's smooth tone was respectful. The identity of Tenryubito and Marine Admiral were enough for him to look up to. I heard that Kuzan and Sakazuki, and you will be promoted to Admiral soon. Why did you suddenly come to Mariehua? Staring at Borsellino's battleship, Dustless frowned slightly. This battleship is obviously different from Marine's battleship. It belongs to the world government, or simply belongs to Vegapunk's scientific force. Vegapunk, that old guy, actually asked me to be his test specimen, and Fleet Admiral Sengoku has agreed. Kizaru's old face twitched fiercely, and his expression became more gloomy, and his eyes were gloomy enough to drip water. Dustless is one of his own people, and he did not hide it. Despite Vegapunk's repeated assurances, the scruples in Kizaru's heart were still difficult to dispel. It was like a white mouse being experimented on by Vegapunk, and no one could be relieved. Believe in Vegapunk's technology. Even if you really die, he can bring you back to life. Dustless smiled. He knew that Vegapunk was interested in the ability of Kizaru's glinting fruit. At the same time, he suddenly realized that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him. Chapter 609. The world is very big, and more than 95% of the area is the sea. Even if Dustless reaches out and sings again, it is impossible to cover the whole world with one hand. Therefore, if he wants to dominate the world, he must have a very large number of troops. Dustless didn't think of this before, but now after hearing what Borsellino said, Dustless also had an idea. Vegapunk, that old guy. I can talk to him about a business deal. That old guy shouldn't refuse. With a gloomy smile on his face, Dustless's eyes lit up. Dustless can order Vegapunk to hand over ordinary things, but confidential research documents are as difficult as ascending to the sky, and it may not be able to scare him. What's more, Dustless needs something that can't be seen on the street. According to Dustless's guess, the Gorasii will definitely stop him. What he wants is the essence of Vegapunk's lifelong research, the bloodline factor, which is the foundation used by the later generations of Doflamingo to create human-made devil fruit. Caesar once said that what Doflamingo stole was an incomplete part. It's impossible to get the complete information of Vegapunk's bloodline factor. Even if he wants to call it out, the 5 Elder Stars won't just watch the information fall into my hands. Dustless frowned as he remembered the conversation with Caesar in the Den Mushi a few days ago. According to Dustless's understanding of the Gorosei, they will definitely not be willing to give such an important thing to him, and they will definitely refuse it with various excuses. Since they can't do it on the surface, they can only obtain it secretly. Obtaining the bloodline factor can also indirectly create an army of devil fruits. In the future, Kaido will buy a large number of artificial devil fruits from Doflamingo and create the world's first artificial devil fruit army. Dustless can follow this method. His current subordinates are only Hawkeye and Doflamingo. Wanting to control the world with these people is tantamount to a fool's dream. The government's humanoid weapon project has been failing a lot recently. There is no suitable body to carry Vegapunk's experiments, so this hard job fell on me. Borsellino sighed and said dejectedly, "The undead army that attacked Mariehua last time made Vegapunk see the feasibility of the humanoid weapon plan. He wants to put my glint fruit on it? As a reward, the highest commander of the scientific force will be me." It sounded tempting, but the premise was that it was a success. Dustless can understand Borsellino's pain. He is a dignified vice admiral, and he will be promoted to admiral at the same time as Kuzan and Sakazuki. But now that Vegapunk had taken a fancy to him, it was self-evident how tangled he was. Borsellino couldn't help but envy Dustless. Dustless's ability was very similar to his, but Vegapunk only took a fancy to him. As for Dustless, Vegapunk probably didn't have the courage to ask. Vegapunk's experiments often fail? Focusing on the key words, Dustless asked blankly. In his impression, Vegapunk is the world's #1 scientist with countless geniuses. Although Caesar was the first to stand up and express his dissatisfaction, the fact is that he is not as good as Vegapunk. That's for sure. He is not a god, failure is natural, a strong mind of 500 years is nothing. Borsellino said with disgust. A vice admiral of the Marine is about to be pushed to the operating table by Vegapunk. It would be strange if he was happy, and Vegapunk's failed works are also countless. Maybe Borsellino will also be labeled as a failure. There is no suitable human body to carry my glint fruit. Normal human beings are too far behind. At the very least, their physical strength must reach the level of a vice admiral. Kizaru's lazy tone was full of pride. Dustless heard this and nodded. He has used glint fruit for decades, and he knows the power of glint fruit better than Borsellino. If he wants to install some of the glint fruit's abilities on the humanoid weapon, he does need a suitable and strong body. In fact, there is someone who meets your requirements. Dustless's seductive voice sounded in Borsellino's ears, and the latter's eyes became cold, but soon dimmed, and his lazy tone was puzzled. I know 2 people can definitely. Mr. Z and Mr. Garp's body both meet that level, but they will certainly not agree. Borsellino's tone was unprecedentedly gloomy, and he said helplessly. You dare to think about it, Vegapunk doesn't have the courage to do it. Dustless said with unusual certainty. Vegapunk didn't dare to think about using the Marine's hero Garp and the former Admiral Z as an experiment. Even though his status is high, he didn't dare to open his mouth. Not to mention Z for the time being, the hero Garp has become a symbol of the Marine. In fact, I can recommend a candidate. With his body's hardness, there is no problem for him to withstand Vegapunk's destruction, but I'm afraid there will be conditions. Dustless's words were like a life-saving straw, attracting Kizaru's attention. It's normal to have conditions. When I became a lab rat, I also made conditions, otherwise who would agree to this kind of experiment? Borsellino thought deeply. Become Vegapunk's test subject for free, what a joke. He wasn't that magnanimous yet. Borsellino also made conditions, that is, to become the highest officer of this force in the future, without any promise of reward, who would agree to be Vegapunk's test subject. The current meatball fruit ability user, the man who once had the title of Tyrant, the bounty of 296 million berries, is also one of the 7 warlords of the sea, Bartholomew Kuma. Dustless said bluntly, his tone was decisive. In fact, Dustless had secretly controlled Tyrant Kuma last time, and now he is his loyal dog. Thinking of the importance of the bloodline factor, which is more important, this Shichibukai is as light as a feather. If he loses a bear, he will get a group of artificial devil fruit troops in the future. After some calculation, Dustless did not hesitate to sell the bear. Chapter 610. The reason why Bartholomew Kumagatsi controlled him was entirely because this kid was looking for trouble. Now that he replaced Kumagatsu with the results of the bloodline factor, Dustless felt that it was quite cost-effective. Anyway, this Kumagatsu can't play any role, so it's better to use the waste. Make the best use of people, make the best use of things, and squeeze out your last value. This is also the necessary price to pay for attacking me. Dustless's face was as usual, and he didn't feel guilty. Being able to let Kumagatsu live until now is already a virtue of God. Bartholomew Kumagatsu? He can indeed take on this task. Borsellino's eyes were shining, and he sighed that this person was feasible. Before he joined the 7 warlords of the sea, Marine had a headache with Bartholomew Kumagatsu. Unlike other pirates, Kumagatsu has the name Tyrant, and is extremely hostile to Marine. His nickname is from slaughtering Marines. Kumagatsu's abnormal physical defense is vivid in Borsellino's mind. His strange ability can bounce off all physical damage, and even human fatigue can be easily bounced off. He is definitely the most suitable experimental body to carry some of the abilities of the glinting fruit. As for his conditions, Borsellino whispered, and his wretched old face became normal. If Kumagatsu really chooses to be the experimental body of the world government's human weapon, then the conditions can be described as a lion's mouth, beyond imagination. The reason why you became an admiral should be inextricably linked to this experiment, Borsellino. While pondering, Dustless's wise whisper sounded in his ears. Borsellino was stunned, looked at his eyes, and then slowly nodded. It's a recognition of Dustless's words. The reason why he can reach the sky in one step is indeed related to this experiment. What is an admiral? It means that in the entire marine from now on only under the fleet admiral, above tens of thousands of people, not only needs the strength of an admiral but also merits. The criteria for becoming an admiral can be roughly divided into 3. The most important is strength, followed by seniority, and in addition there are personal merits. The 3 are indispensable. To put it simply, to become a great general, one still needs to have battle achievements. To become a great general, one must have achievements that can block the mouths of the people in the world. Only by becoming Vegapunk's test subject can Borsellino have a meteoric rise. This guy is very cunning. Even if Vegapunk's transformation fails, the tyrant bear will be the one to suffer, and he can stay out of it. Rubbing his head awkwardly, Borsellino said helplessly, Louis South Saint is really wise and frightening. He guessed my thoughts. As Dustless said he did have such an idea. Even if it failed, it would only be Xiong who was going to undergo the physical transformation. If it failed, Borsellino would not be implicated. If Xiong did not join in, he might be the one who was going to undergo the physical transformation. No wonder he would make so many excuses. Maybe in the future there will for Borsellino number 1. Borsellino number 2. He shuddered uncontrollably when he thought about it. Even if Vegapunk fails in the end, the Marine or the world government will not blame Vegapunk. Now Borsellino is just an insignificant vice-admiral. Although he is dozens of times stronger than the average vice-admiral, he is still far worse than Vegapunk. The world government and the Marine will still operate without Borsellino, and without Vegapunk and his inventions, they will fall into an unprecedented disadvantage. Now if Tyrant Kumagatsu joins, it will naturally be the best of both worlds. But will that guy really join the humanoid weapon experiment? It doesn't look like it. Thinking of Kumagatsu's hatred towards the Marine, Borsellino asked suspiciously. He is the one who hates the Marine the most among the Shichibukai. Dustless glanced at Borsellino and replied, You have to understand that Kumagatsu is now one of the Shichibukai. In a way he has already compromised. If he hates the Marine he will not join the Shichibukai, and he will not shamelessly serve the Marine. You can ask him yourself. Leaving a light sentence, Dustless disappeared into the sky, and his breath disappeared without a trace. Hancock, who followed, saw Dustless leave and also left. This guy. I used to hear that his fruit ability is similar to mine, but I thought it was just a rumor. Now it seems that some of his abilities are very similar to the glint fruit, and his ability to use it is much stronger than mine. Borsellino looked serious and exclaimed in his heart. There are legends about Dustless's fruit ability among the Marines' higher-ups. Most of the statements are consistent with Borsellino's glint fruit ability. He thought it was fabricated, but today not only is it true, Dustless's control of the glint fruit is completely beyond his understanding. Do I need to ask him to teach me 2 moves? Forget it, he is not free and I am not free. With a sigh, Borsellino didn't think much about it and quickly turned back to contact Kumagatsu of the Shichibukai. After all, it is a good thing to have a scapegoat. The night sky was particularly quiet and peaceful. Borsellino quickly contacted Kumagatsu, thinking that he would refuse his conditions on the spot. He didn't expect him to agree to participate in the experiment. And the condition is Vegapunk's secret research data, the bloodline factor. The bloodline factor is beyond the limits of Borsellino's rights. After some contemplation for the sake of his life, he can only go to Vegapunk, the mad scientist. Hearing that Bartholomew Kumagatsu of the Shichibukai, Vegapunk agreed even more strangely and didn't even mention the word, no. Not only was Borsellino not happy, but he also had an ugly expression on his face. He secretly scolded Vegapunk for being shameless. He felt abandoned. When there was no suitable experimental subject, he flattered him every day, but when there was Kumagatsu, he immediately put him aside. Chapter 6:11. At night, Mariehua was not as peaceful as it used to be. Many ports did not stop opening. Suddenly, many kings from all over the world came to visit Mariehua. Every 5 years, the world government will hold a meeting with members of the joining countries. The content of the discussion is naturally meaningless topics such as world peace and the Revolutionary Army. The quiet Mariehua was also lively at this time, and the celestial dragons were also strangely quiet, no longer torturing slaves, and the depressing screams no longer came out. Dustless had to sigh. When did the arrogant celestial dragons pay so much attention to their image and influence? Get out of the way, don't follow. Seeing Dustless coming, the faces of the kings on the roadside changed greatly and they took the initiative to give way. Although they didn't know what Dustless's surname was, they knew the uniform that the celestial dragons dared to wear. Some of the people who came with their families grabbed the soil and the flowers and smeared it on the faces of the women. Sometimes being born beautiful was also a sin. Looking at this scene, Wu Chen's expression was normal. He was like a sculpture without any emotion. His face was cold and detached from the world. He walked through the crowd magnanimously. La la la. The cheerful voice of a child was filled with innocence, like the laughter of a butterfly strolling among the flowers. His watery eyes shone like pearls, and his wave-like blue hair gave people a refreshing feeling. Behind him, there was a slightly impatient voice with a hint of helplessness. Don't wander around, this is not Alabastan, Vivi. The young girl turned her head and made a face, and then continued to run forward. Perhaps because she was too excited to play, she didn't realize that there was a celestial dragons coming toward her. Bang, ouch, it hurts. Vivi covered her head, and there were some tears deep in the corners of her eyes. Looking up, she saw the ugly celestial dragons with bubbles. The tears in the corners of her eyes immediately came back, and her little face was as pale as paper. Sorry, she is still young, she didn't mean it. Kobula, who was Vivian's father, hurriedly came over and took him into his arms. His eyes were full of despair, and he looked at the disgusting celestial dragon in front of him with a nervous breakdown. He resisted the fear in his heart and looked at him. How dare you bump into me? You're courting death. The ugly Tenryubito glared at the father and daughter and pointed the delicate pistol in his hand at Kobula. This sudden turn of events attracted everyone's attention. No one extended a helping hand to Kobula and his daughter. There were even some who acted as if this had nothing to do with them, with a mocking expression on their faces. Kobula's heart and soul were torn apart. Unknowingly, he was already kneeling on the ground. Just as he was about to open his mouth to beg for mercy again, a light shout stopped Kobula. You are the king of Alabasta. It doesn't matter if you kneel, but your people won't trust you anymore. Looking in the direction of the voice, he saw Dustless and Hancock walking leisurely. So it's you, you clown. Staring at the ugly Tenryubito, Dustless suddenly found that he had an impression of it. It was the Tenryubito who was tortured by Luffy in the Sabaody archipelago. His name was Charles Ross, and he had a sister named Shalulia. You freak, you want to intervene when I'm dealing with a lowly person? Where is your dignity as a Tenryubito Royce South? Seeing Dustless coming, Charles Ross roared. The gun in his hand was put down. He knew what would happen if he offended Dustless, because he was thrown into the garbage dump by Dustless's men like many Tenryubito a while ago. You can shoot and kill them. Glancing at Charles Ross, Dustless's mouth then curled into a playful smile, touched his chin, and made a thoughtful and incomprehensible expression. However, I really want to know what kind of unprecedented scene it is for a Tenryubito to be chased by a shark in the sea. Maybe you will be famous for this. Why don't you let us try, Charles Ross? The ugly Tenryubito was disgusted and looked at Dustless as if he was looking at a devil. Immediately, he slipped away without hesitation. His crooked steps were like a roly-poly, extremely funny, and he fled in a hurry. He who had been beaten by Dustless knew that this was not a joke. Do you regret it now? Staring at the disappearing back of Charles Ross, Dustless turned his head and asked. His eyes fell on Corbula's frightened face and he sighed. About 800 years ago, 20 kings established the world government. The royal family of Alabaston, which is today's Corbula, and his daughter Weiwei, were actually Tenryubito like Dustless and Doflamingo. But the Nefertari family refused to move into the holy land of Mariehua, and they lost their identity as Tenryubito. The ancestors made the decision, but the younger generation can't make the judgment. Corbula, who was still in shock, trembled and was full of fear. When Dustless heard it, he could hear the regret. If he and his daughter Weiwei were Tenryubito, there would not be such a frightening scene today. Tenryubito can look down on anyone as if they were insects. Even their so-called powerful kings are just the lowest existence in front of Tenryubito. To put it bluntly, they are pariahs. The Tenryubito society belongs to the old slave social system. They have a strong concept of bloodline, a strong sense of racial superiority, and a serious attitude of discrimination against anyone except Tenryubito. In short, they don't treat anyone as a human being. Well? Dustless, who was about to speak, suddenly noticed a pair of cold eyes, secretly peeping at him. He did not dare to approach deliberately but looked at him obscurely. This is interesting. His sight suddenly became as sharp as a knife, sweeping through the sea of people, and a figure suddenly came into view. It seemed that he was aware of Dustless's gaze, and the spying figure quickly flashed away and went into the vast sea of people, and the breath disappeared as if it had never appeared. I forgot about this guy. But your courage has not shrunk. As always, you are bold and reckless. You actually think that's it, stupid? Chapter 6:12. A burly body suddenly came into Dustless's pupils, wearing a heavy black coat, with a golden hook in his left hand, a tall figure of nearly 2 meters and a horizontal scar on his face. It is Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai today. This old boy's strength is improving rapidly. The dark pupils turned around Crocodile, and the heart of the ancient well rippled. Although Dustless was a little surprised, he nodded silently. The humiliation given to Crocodile last time has taken root and sprouted in his heart, planting the seeds of hatred, so he can do his best to become stronger. Only in this way can the distance between each other be narrowed, and the figure of Dustless of the other side will be getting closer and closer. In fact, Shichibukai often participate in this kind of meeting. As one of the 3 major forces of the Grand Line Shichibukai, which country is too unbalanced and needs their approval? It sounds powerful, but in fact only small people like Crocodile are tempted. It's like Hawkeye doesn't care about this kind of meeting at all. But you dare to take the initiative to test me? As the saying goes, courtesy demands reciprocity. As the master of Mariehua, I will also give you some gifts. The indifferent expression was replaced by a smirk without a trace, and his eyes were slightly scattered. After seeing that no one was around, Dustless's gaze was as sharp as a knife, and the direction locked was Crocodile's body. In the dark, Crocodile, with a cigar in his mouth, seemed to sense the existence of Dustless, and his footsteps suddenly stopped, and he turned around suspiciously. The first thing that came into his eyes was Dustless. This guy, he did it on purpose, deliberately letting me find him? Crocodile, who was aware of the existence of Dustless, was frozen, and he couldn't help but think of the scene when he came to Mariehua for the first time as Shichibukai. The scene of being crushed by Dustless was vivid in his mind. Almost instinctively he felt something was wrong, and a calm heart became irritable, but he couldn't tell the specifics, so he could only secretly put up 120% of his heart on guard. This is Mariehua in the tiger's den and wolf's den. It is not a kind place. Even if he is killed, there will be no one to bury him. You be ****. You peeked at my wife bathing and stole her underwear. At this moment, a red-faced and stout king ran over angrily. He pointed at Crocodile's nose and scolded him. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked so angry that he wanted to tear Crocodile into pieces. What nonsense are you talking about? If you don't want to die, then get out of my way. The unexpected change stunned Crocodile, and he immediately scolded with a murderous aura. He didn't put the king in his eyes at all and was full of contempt. It was not because this was Mariehua. He could deal with the minions in front of him with a hook. This was the territory of the world government, so he had to give some face. In a world where the strong were respected, the one with the biggest fist had the final say. You peeked at my wife bathing and stole her underwear. How dare you talk to me like this? The king's eyes widened and he couldn't believe it. He didn't expect there to be such a rampant flower thief in the world. Crocodile's face became more and more gloomy when he heard this, and the hook in his left hand was raised. When he was about to end the king's life, another change occurred. The surrounding void was slightly distorted. Although the amplitude was not large, it could be seen with the naked eye. In particular, the space around Crocodile was the most serious. It was filled with some kind of mysterious force like a whirlpool in the deep sea, and something seemed to break out of its shell. This is fire? Seeing such a strange scene, Crocodile was stunned, and he immediately tensed his spirit and became alert. He noticed a throbbing flame from this unsightly whirlpool. It was not very lethal, but it had a different kind of strangeness. For a while, even the king who provoked him looked away. That's not right, this is... Looking closely, Crocodile, who suddenly realized that something was wrong, twitched his old face and had already guessed what kind of powerful thing it was. Ka. The distorted void suddenly expanded and burst open like a mirror. Countless women's underwear fell out of it and fell in front of Crocodile like fine snow. This sudden scene made everyone stunned, and they stared blankly at the women's underwear all over the ground. You shameless bastard. You look like a fiend. That black one is my wife's. The previous king said bitterly with tears streaming down his face. Old man, are you king idiot? This is obviously a frame-up. How did you become a king when you look like a stupid pig? Crocodile, who was angry out of humiliation, grabbed his neck and roared furiously. With scarlet fire in his eyes, Crocodile vomited blood in his heart. This unexpected disaster really came at the wrong time. He was beaten up when he just came to Mariewa. It was extremely unlucky. Let go of me, don't forget where you are. The powerful low voice sounded through his ears and Crocodile's expression was stiff. Although he was unwilling, he still let go of his hand and threw the king in front of him out like garbage. The person who spoke was the former Marine Fleet Admiral, and now the Commander-in-Chief of the entire army, Sky. This is a blatant conspiracy. What is your government doing? With his mouth twitching, Crocodile roared to defend himself, and his face was extremely gloomy. Fleet Admiral Kong's old eyes looked at the women's underwear all over the ground. Of course, he knew that this was a conspiracy, but it had been confirmed and there were even witnesses. Crocodile jumped into the sea and couldn't wash it away. In the future he would have a funny name, Underwear Thief. Staring at Crocodile's old face, Fleet Admiral Kong was happy. He used to be a Marine and hated the deformed organization, Seven Warlords of the Sea, very much. What's more, this is Mariewa. How can he tolerate Crocodile's trouble? Chapter 613. Crocodile's old face dripped blood and turned into a strange purple color. An unprecedented grievance spread from the bottom of his heart. He was 100% sure that the person behind the scenes was Dustless who was smiling at him. Crocodile couldn't fight back. He was teased like a clown without any dignity. He had no evidence. As the saying goes, catch a thief with the stolen goods. This is the truth that has not changed since ancient times. Framing a celestial dragon, this unique big hat will be buckled on his head. Every dog has its day, let's wait and see. Under the strange gazes of the crowd, Crocodile walked away with a black face. Before leaving, he did not forget to glare fiercely at the complacent Dustless. Then he turned around and left indignantly. He could only suffer in silence. If he stayed here, he would only be humiliating himself. Their obscure eyes locked onto Cobra at the same time, glancing at him faintly before fleeing in a panic like a mouse. Being stared at by a group of ants and yet unable to do anything, Crocodile felt his stomach ache just thinking about it. His hatred for Dustless reached an all-time high. Looking at Crocodile's disappearing back, Commander Kong shook his head incomprehensibly. He also knew that Crocodile's black hand was Dustless. You don't see the big picture. Going against the current will only bring about your own destruction. That laughable fantasy in your heart is just a lie to yourself and others. With an imposing wave of his hand, Chief Kong and the group of guards left one after another. Only then did this farce come to an end. In the eyes of Commander Kong, Crocodile was just an idiot filled with hatred. That's all. This kind of person can be Seven Warlords of the Sea. He couldn't agree. No matter how hard Crocodile tried to change fate in the end, the result was in vain. Some people are not qualified to choose to dominate fate at all. Like Crocodile, who doesn't know life and death and tries to challenge the wheel of fate, there is only one end. He will be ruthlessly crushed and turned into a pile of flesh and blood. That kid seems to be planning to do it. Frowning slightly, Dustless naturally saw Crocodile's malicious eyes. At the same time, he couldn't help but admire Crocodile's methods. If he didn't know the development of this world in advance and had the ability to predict the future, he might not have known about the existence of a sophisticated weapon like Pluto. "Thank you for saving me," Kobula thanked him gratefully and sincerely. If Dustless hadn't helped them out in time, they might have been shot to death by the celestial dragon named Chalos. Judging from the violent and bloodthirsty mood of the celestial dragon, they might have been brutally dismembered after death. This kind of appalling thing, the celestial dragons here are rare and common and everywhere. "May I ask my benefactor?" The corner of Kobula's mouth stopped moving. Realizing the difference between their identities, Kobula swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. There was a world of difference between the identity of a king and a celestial dragon. Rashly asking for the other party's name was also a kind of silent blasphemy. "Big brother, what's your name?" Seemingly seeing her father's confusion, Vivian took a step forward and blinked innocently. Looking at the young and innocent girl with cold eyes, the indifference in Dustless's eyes slowly converged, and a rare gentleness swept across. His indifferent voice was also magnetic. Thinking of his complicated life experience, he frowned and said, "Now my name is Lois South." "Now, do you still have your previous name?" Vivian blinked innocently as she asked. Dustless was obviously not interested in the child's question. Like a ghost, he disappeared into the void and answered her question on a whim, leaving only a faint voice that lingered in the void. "Maybe, but who knows?" The moonlight was like a plate, and the night sky was as quiet as stagnant water. Late at night, the lively Mariehua also quieted down. Under the hazy moonlight, a black shadow could be vaguely seen sneaking in the dark. Its steps were light, like a dragonfly skimming the water. Its movements and jumps were natural, elegant, and vigorous. From this exquisite skill, it can be seen that it has reached the realm of perfection at first glance. Under the faint moonlight, one could vaguely see the silhouette of a person. She was tall and had long black hair that cascaded down like a waterfall. Her facial features were regular and beautiful. Her sparkling eyes were unusually calm and filled with wisdom. The direction of the girl is heading is Dustless's villa. "Is she here?" Hancock, who had been waiting for a long time, suddenly opened her eyes and saw the figure rushing towards her, showing a soft smile, like an old friend meeting with a little excitement. "Long time no see, Robin," Hancock said gently with a smile. Apparently she was very familiar with the figure in front of her. Looking at Hancock's figure, you will be surprised to find that this person is the wanted criminal with the name Devil Child, Nico Robin. A few years ago, the Marines that surrounded Nico Robin were destroyed by Dustless. She was rescued by Dustless. By chance, she also became Dustless's subordinate. She was sneaking outside like a hidden chess piece. Now she is secretly a subordinate of Crocodile. This time she came to Mariehua with Crocodile. She was able to sneak into Mariehua safely. Naturally, she made a simple disguise to not be recognized. "Long time no see, Hancock." Nicole Robin also greeted him warmly. Obviously, the relationship between the two of them was unexpectedly close. She asked, "Master, why did you suddenly call me over?" Crocodile is suspicious by nature. He has already executed many of his subordinates who were suspicious. Crocodile is cunning, despicable, and shameless, but it is undeniable that he does have some cleverness. Every time he can lead the situation to his own side, he can be regarded as a hero of a generation. Hancock shook her head when she heard this, indicating that she didn't understand. Dustless's thoughts of preparing for a rainy day could not be seen through, let alone understood. Chapter 6:14. As for why Nicole Robin agreed to be Dustless's subordinate, the reason was very simple. First, she was desperate, and she had to find a spacious and safe shoulder to lean on. Second, Dustless promised that after her mission was completed in the future, he would use Rinnegan's power to resurrect her mother with the technique of Rinnegan. Although there was suspicion of taking advantage of people, Dustless never valued the process. No matter how perfect the plan is, there will be countless loopholes. In contrast, he pays more attention to the final result. Hancock and Robin walked together, laughing and chatting happily towards Wu Chen's bedroom. From time to time, there was a crisp and pleasant laughter, showing their harmonious relationship. These two little girls, forget it, it's not bad. Dustless looked down at the figures walking side by side, standing with his hands behind his back, nodded and chuckled, then shook his head and couldn't help but sigh. Dustless still clearly remembered that because of a certain protagonist, the relationship between Robin and Hancock was not harmonious, and even a little bit hostile. It was completely new to him. When dealing with the enemy, the muzzle was united, and the internal relationship was harmonious. This was the situation Dustless wanted to see. Although he scoffed at the so-called fetters, he still hoped that they could be restrained by each other's sincerity. As for an anomaly like Doflamingo, Dustless didn't hold any hope. Sitting on the sofa in silence, Wuxia tasted the steaming tea carefully. Sometimes he would pick up 1 or 2 pieces of carefully made pastries and put them into his mouth. In this world he had developed the habit of eating snacks unconsciously, which could be regarded as killing the boring leisure time. About a few minutes later, Robin and Hancock came to Dustless's bedroom. "Master." The smile on their faces disappeared, and the two respectfully said. Dustless nodded. "You don't need to be so serious, sit down." Robin and Hancock looked at each other and sat down quietly. Compared with the slightly cautious Robin, Hancock, who usually gets along with Dustless every day, was more relaxed and natural. "Is Crocodile going to attack Alabaston?" As soon as Robin sat down, Dustless asked. "I don't know the specific situation, but it's true that he often pays attention to the situation of Alabaston, especially the royal family of Alabaston." Dustless frowned, and his face was full of doubts. It stands to reason that a small character like Crocodile knows the information of Pluton. After thinking about it, Dustless filtered the people he contacted in the past few months. He only thought of one person who may know the source of information of Pluton. Embryo Ivankov, a senior cadre of the Revolutionary Army and a paramecia hormone fruit user. Although the times are few, Dustless learned from White Zetsu that the two had contacted each other. As for the content of the conversation, only God knows. Maybe Crocodile got the information of Pluton from him, so he recruited Nico Robin, the devil child, opened an umbrella for her as a Shichibukai, and took the opportunity to sneak into Mariehua. "Master, why do you want to interpret the poneglyphs? These unmentionable pasts should be the past that the world government has always wanted to erase. Exposing them will do you no good as a celestial dragon." Staring at Dustless's face, Robin asked doubtfully. The general content of the so-called poneglyphs, according to her guess, is to record how the 20 kings destroyed an ancient kingdom 800 years ago. Of course, there are also records of the whereabouts of ancient weapons. If you have to find a reason, looking at Robin's eyes and sorting out his thoughts, Dustless said, "I'm not interested in who is right or wrong in history, and ancient weapons are actually dispensable to me." Dustless said frankly and seriously, showing sincere feelings in his words. Even though his expression was still frozen and cold, it was a lot gentler, and the cold villa gradually warmed up. "To put it simply, I'm just curious." "Curious?" Hearing this, Robin couldn't help but be startled, and the corners of her mouth twitched slightly. The answer she had been looking forward to for a long time should be refreshing, not so simple and casual. Looking at Dustless's eyes, Robin's sight no longer changed. People say that the eyes are the windows of the soul. As long as there is any lie, the eyes will dodge and shrink and even blink unnaturally. Could it be true? After a while, Robin said in astonishment. Her black eyes were as calm as autumn water, but her own eyes were constantly changing and jumping irregularly. She had never thought that Dustless's reason for looking for the poneglyphs would be so frivolous and careless. "Don't be so surprised, there are very few things in this world that can satisfy me." Dustless's words were full of helplessness, and he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. From Robin's stunned and doubtful look, she seemed to think that it was a lie. "I'm not interested in the poneglyphs. If you insist on looking for a far-fetched purpose, it's nothing more than searching for the truth. Don't you think it's ridiculous to be fooled by the past 800 years like a clown?" Dustless stared at the doubtful Robin and asked. I think I have some understanding." Robin nodded, and her clear eyes were still a little confused. She vaguely understood Dustless's meaning. Dustless wasn't interested in the truth of history. Who was right and who was wrong had nothing to do with him. It was 800 years later, and everything in the past had changed. It had turned into a pile of yellow soil, and everything had lost its meaning. The only thing that annoyed him was that if you died, you died. Why did you have to leave behind a bunch of deceptive mysteries that harmed the future generations? You played the whole world like a chess piece in the palm of your hand. This was also the reason why Dustless couldn't accept it. No one wanted to be deceived by a corpse that had decayed hundreds of years ago. Others might not care, but Dustless had a bone-deep hatred for it. Chapter 6:15. His tone was resolute and decisive, and it was obvious that he was not joking. Nico Robin's eyes widened as she looked at Dustless incredulously. She didn't expect such a ridiculous reason. She could only smile bitterly. Perhaps this is the mind of the Tenryuzu people. They eat, drink, play and do things for no purpose. They just want to have fun. Will the Straw Hat really invite me to join their pirate group in the future? Although Dustless has confirmed it again and again, Nico Robin's heart was still full of doubts. Dustless has now clearly explained what will happen in the next 10 years. How can she not be surprised? It seems that everything will play out according to the script set by Dustless. Maybe there will be accidents, but it's just a trivial matter. Don't worry about it. People who don't have the power and try to change the development of history will only be crushed to pieces. Dustless vowed that Robin joining the Straw Hat Pirates is a sure thing, and he can use the Straw Hat Pirates to decipher the Poneglyph. Staying with him will attract unnecessary trouble. Tenryuzu and the only remaining scholars of Ohara are mixed together. It's very attractive to think about this topic. After the collection of the Poneglyph, what should we do with the pirates? Robin asked curiously. After that? That's unnecessary. After they have no value, we will kill them all. Dustless murderously said. Even though he has a good relationship with Dustless, he won't change his position because of this. Unless Monkey D. Luffy is sensible, Dustless doesn't mind letting him live. If he doesn't, he will end up like Uzumaki Naruto. You have grown up so much. I have to take back the power of the Sharingan that I lent you. Dustless whispered. When he secretly brought the young Nico Robin to Mariehua, Dustless was afraid that she would be in danger, so he lent her his dojutsu. Now Robin has the power to protect herself, and there is the protection of Crocodile. The power of Sharingan continues to stay in her body is just a burden. Time flew by quickly. After instructing Nico and Robin on many important matters, it was almost dawn. The three of them were not ordinary humans. Even if they stayed up for an entire night, their expressions would not change. Robin then used his agile movements to leave without anyone noticing. It was as if nothing had happened. At the same time, Dustless also brought the bloodline factor information he obtained to Dressrosa through a secret channel, and successfully fell into the hands of Caesar. Caesar immediately carried out various experiments and accelerated the production of the artificial devil fruit. Because Fengche village was too remote, no one cared about it. Bandits would often visit this place. On the mountain road, a group of bandits was about to go to the town to rob, but a strange figure suddenly flashed. He had a handsome face and fair skin. At first glance, he was the son of a wealthy family. Pretty boy, hand over all your valuables and I'll leave your corpse intact. The ferocious bandit stood out. Seeing that Wu Chen was dressed like a young master from a wealthy family, he immediately warned. At the same time, he shook the machete in his hand, full of threat. Sig Mountain bandits, it should be you. The king of your group of rats is called Sig, and he has a bounty of 8 million berries. Ignoring the threat of the bandits, Dustless said to himself, and at the same time, his eyes began to twist sharply, turning into dark red magatama, staring at the group of people with no expression. You called me the Rat King? As the leader, Sig's old face twitched fiercely. He stepped forward and his old face turned green. He waved his hand and said with hatred, it's not too late to cut him up and search him so that he doesn't have to struggle. Since the boss gave the order, the group of bandits naturally did not dare to disobey, and they rushed toward Dustless. You group of bandits can fight with Akagami of Jianghu, 4 emperors, and indirectly take one of his arms. It can be regarded as a blessing from the ancestral grave. A faint ripple appeared in his scarlet eyes, and the aggressive group of bandits instantly fell to the ground like dead dogs. Guru Guru, at this moment the Den Den Mushi in his arms suddenly rang. It was used by Dustless and Hawkeye. Did you kill the guy called Baronegi? Before Hawkeye spoke, Dustless asked in advance. Eating the dark fruit has to pay a price, and this unbearable price is life. Do you think you can be safe after eating the dark fruit with the blessing of Bigumamu? What a fool. Although it is a little more troublesome, it has been done. Hawkeye was a little tired, but he was full of energy. It is very difficult to quietly kill the people protected by Bigumamu. He must find a chance to kill them. Otherwise, once he is discovered, he will be besieged. Therefore, Hawkeye wasted a lot of time looking for the right opportunity. But there is one thing, Kaido and Bigumamu seem to have colluded. I don't know what they are planning. On the other side of the Den Den Mushi, Hawkeye's cautious voice sounded. The destructive power of the 2 Yonko, 4 emperors, is beyond imagination, and their power can even defeat the Whitebeard pirates. Kaido and Big's mom could easily restrain Whitebeard, and even severely injure Whitebeard, and their fleets could crush Whitebeard's fleet with overwhelming power. Don't worry, I have already predicted the collusion of the Yonko, 4 emperors. A pirate is a pirate. There is nothing they can't do under absolute interests. Dustless was calm. He had already predicted that this day would come. Not colluding means that it is likely to be destroyed. Even if there is a grudge, it must be cut off and forgotten. Otherwise it will be a dead end, so even if there is a grudge in the past, it must be eliminated. Compared with life, nothing is more important. You are very indifferent. Hawkeye's tone was speechless. When 2 Yonko, 4 emperors, join forces, there is absolutely no force in the world that can easily crush Universal. Chapter 616. The strength of a Yonko, 4 emperors, almost dominates all the seas and can be called an invincible existence, like an emperor, the strongest existence above all creatures. The strength of 2 Yonko, 4 emperors, is self-evident, and the strong vibration emitted by them is enough to affect the whole world. This guy doesn't know how to be anxious at all. Hawkeye can't help admiring Dustless's calm mentality. The Yonko, 4 emperors, teaming up is not a joke. If you are not careful, you will be suppressed by the absolute power that can burn the world. You will never be able to raise your head. So what, are we going to beg for mercy in front of those 2 guys, Hawkeye? Dustless on the other side of the den Mushi asked. His frivolous tone was extremely indifferent. The Emperor is not anxious, but the eunuch is anxious. Hawkeye suddenly realized that he was thinking too much. Dustless is not worried and there is no need to worry. Even if the sky falls, Dustless will be the first to take the hit. Only when Dustless collapsed would it be their group of underlings' turn. Then again, both the Bigumam pirates and the Kaido pirates have been hit hard. Even if they join forces with each other, they won't be able to take any practical action in a short time. After lurking around Bigumam for a while, Hawkeye knew the current situation of the Bigumam pirates. The entire fleet was beaten by Whitebeard. Even Bigga's mother was wounded, so it was easy to imagine the miserable fate of the crew and sailors of the fleet. Kaido is not that strong, he is not as good as Bigumam. Dustless said on the other side of the den Mushi. Not to mention that the 2 of them were working together now, even if they were working in collusion with each other at their peak, Wuxia was not afraid at all. Even if the number of people is not as good as Bigumam and Kaido pirates, the absolute strength is enough to crush everything, and the role of the human wave tactic is minimal. Absolute strength is Dustless's confidence, so he is not afraid of Kaido and Bigumam. After a casual chat, Dustless closed the den Mushi and turned to look at the bandits on the ground with a cruel smile on his face. For the sake of world peace, it was better to eliminate the Yonko as soon as possible. The first to raise the butcher's knife was the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates who hated Dustless the most. The enmity between the 2 sides had accumulated for a long time, and it had already reached the point of being incompatible like fire and water. Dustless naturally wouldn't let go of this extremely rare opportunity. I'm sorry, Garp. I might have to make use of your grandson this time. Dustless said coldly with a cold glint in his eyes. An unprecedentedly vicious plan quietly formed in his heart. If he had to blame someone, he could only blame Red Hair Shanks for asking for it. There was no one else to blame. He was completely caught in his own trap. Red Hair Shanks could make use of D, and Dustless was no exception. He could also make use of D, and give him a taste of his own medicine. No matter how optimistic Red Hair's temperament was, he would still feel despair if he was hurt by someone he trusted and bet on in the next era. Dustless is going to attack him step by step until his spirit collapses. Monkey. D. Luffy. If you want to complain, you should hate the word D in your name, so you were valued by Red Hair Shanks, so you were calculated by me. Scarlet eyes widened again and ripples visible to the naked eye appeared. The bandits on the ground stood up again. Their eyes were blank and their eyes were empty and lifeless. It was as if their inner souls had been taken away and they had become walking corpses. Obviously, they had been controlled by Dustless's Sharingan and had lost their ability to think. Dustless is now the one who dominates their consciousness. Red-haired Shanks had absolute trust in Luffy, but Dustless didn't go against that kid's wishes. He had to borrow Luffy's hands to once again inflict heavy damage on his unbearable heart, until red-haired Shanks' spirit collapsed. He planned to use the same method as Beckman to trample on red-hair Shanks. No, this time he wanted to be even crueler than the last time. In the past he was able to escape from death. This time, even if he could not kill him directly, he wanted to leave an indelible mark on Red Hair's body. "Look at my eyes, you waste." With a loud shout, Dustless shouted at the bandits. "They are the most important actors in the play, and they can't be missing. Now go and catch that kid Manchidi, Luffy, for me. Remember the Akagami, Red Hair? Pirates must see that it was you who did it." With a cold light in his eyes, Dustless ordered. The bandits nodded blankly and immediately rushed toward the windmill town, in the direction of the bandit house where Luffy usually goes. Although the plan is a bit rough, Dustless is sure that it will succeed. Sometimes the simpler the strategy, the more unexpected the effect. This group of hired actors is rough, but their opponents are the same pirates, so it shouldn't be a problem to grab Luffy. Sure enough, after about an hour, this group of bandits did indeed come back with a fainted little ghost. The only thing that was not complimentary was the fact that there were pursuers behind them. Kid. As far as the eye could see, a golden-haired child with a face full of freckles and a hat was immediately reflected in Wu Chen's eyes. These two guys. One of them is the kid named Sabo, and the other seems to be the son of One Piece, Roger Portgas D. Wu Chen couldn't help but be speechless. He knew that these two brats were ferocious, but it was inexcusable for a group of bandits to be chased by two brats. Wansho Tensei. After looking at the child in the hands of one of the bandits, Dustless's right hand exuded a strong gravitational force and easily sucked Luffy over. Then he looked at the approaching bandits, and with a calm and powerful light shout, suddenly the dust splashed and the ground was full of smoke. The tyrannical repulsion swept out, and the ground where Dustless was standing also had a deep pit. Shinra Tensei. Chapter 617. The tyrannical repulsive force was extremely small, but the strength was unexpectedly strong. The people who came in contact with it were all bounced back like particles. It was as simple as eating or drinking water. The bandits who were too close to Dustless were bounced back without any effort. They fell heavily on the ground and directly fainted with white foam coming out of their mouths. Looking at Luffy in his hand expressionlessly, Dustless's Sharingan rotated rapidly. His finger lightly touched Luffy's forehead and implanted a transcription seal in his eyes. Of course, because he isn't an Uchiha, he doesn't have the Sharingan, so Dustless just implanted a genjutsu that doesn't harm the body. It's a genjutsu that can only be released at a specific time when meeting a specific person. Transcription seal. It's like a ticking time bomb. No one knows when it will explode, and the probability of the people in this world being able to resist it is 0. "You bastard, let go of Luffy." The young and firm voice rang in his ears. Dustless raised his head. It was Ace who was holding a broadsword and Sabo who was holding an iron water pipe. Both of them stared at Dustless ferociously. Their clear eyes were replaced by murderous intent. They were like beasts that just broke out of their cages. It's hard to imagine that children of a few years old have such gloomy eyes. "So what if I don't let go? What do you think two brats can do?" Dustless asked with interest as his eyes fell on the two of them. In the future these two will be popular figures in the world, but now they are just wild vegetables on the roadside. No one cares about them. "I will kill you, damn bastard." Ace's murderous intent turned into a cold light shooting out of his eyes. He swooped down at an extremely fast speed. The moment he touched Dustless, his body agilely jumped a few meters high, and his broadsword flashed with cold light, chopping down towards Dustless's head. "So young and so ruthless, your temper is the same as your father's." Ace's fiery temper, which valued his companions, was very similar to Joel D. Roger in the past. He wouldn't allow anyone to bully his companions and friends. To a certain extent, this was the tradition of the entire D clan. They all valued their companions. Boring. Dustless stared emotionlessly at the falling blade. He calmly stretched out two fingers and grabbed the sharp blade. Clang. Along with the sound of metal clashing against metal, he looked up and saw Dustless's two fingers easily catching the blade in the air. The cold blade stopped above Dustless's head, unable to move. Those two slender fingers were as hard as steel. How is this possible? The inexperienced Ace's eyes widened as a look of disbelief appeared on his face. To be able to catch a blade with his bare hands, this was the first time he had seen such a shocking scene. Bang! With a hook of his thumb, a ferocious repulsive force immediately shot out. A powerful and ferocious air wave immediately whizzed out. Ace, who was completely unaware of it, flew out powerlessly like a kite, smashing into a few trees. Poochie. With some ruddy blood stains on the corner of his mouth, Ace stood up strongly. Although his body was swaying as he stood up, His eyes were firmly locked on Dustless or Luffy in Dustless's hand. This kid is worthy of being the son of One Piece. His willpower is surprisingly strong. Seeing this, Dustless nodded slightly and looked at the young ace in a new light. Strong willpower, this seems to be the tradition of the D-clan. The physiques of the humans in this world are ridiculously strong. Even a child is so resistant to beatings. Wu Qin said incredulously as ripples appeared in his eyes that were as tranquil as an ancient well. They are all humans, but in this world where pirates run rampant, their physique seems to be much more resistant to beatings than Naruto's. Call Luffy out for me or I will kill you. Glaring at Dustless, little Ace gnashed his teeth and roared. His face was as ferocious as a devil's. At the same time he took out a gun from nowhere and pointed the black muzzle at Dustless. It seems that if he says no, Ace will not hesitate to shoot. Alala alala. What a scary little demon. Guns are dangerous toys. With a smile, Dustless then put Luffy on the ground, raised his hands, made a gesture of surrender and looked at Ace with fear. Is this okay, scary kid? At least you know what's good for you. Glaring fiercely at Dustless, Ace gave Sabo a look. The latter nodded, then quickly trotted to Dustless's side, picked up the sleeping Luffy and turned away. The three figures quickly disappeared into the woods. In the future I will kill you with my own hands. Before I go to sea, don't let your head be taken away by others. In the dark forest, Ace's angry and gloomy roar could be heard. Probably because he was played by Wu Qin today, he felt unusually angry and uncomfortable. If you can really do it, I'll wait and see. Dustless put down his raised arms. For Ace's words, Dustless just smiled. Staring at the black shadow that has disappeared, and thinking of the low-key Akagami, red hair, pirates in Windmill Town, Dustless's eyes were cold, and then he looked at the unconscious bandits on the ground, and the Sharingan in his pupils turned and twisted again. These bandits' show was not over yet, and it was too early to give them a holiday. Afterward, Wu Qin walked around the Windmill Town alone. When he didn't find anything special, he left. He wasn't interested in such a remote place. For this secret mission, Dustless did not take a warship. He could only walk alone into the depths of the sea. The soles of his feet were covered with a thin layer of chakra, and he walked on the endless sea like a dragonfly skimming the water. His leisurely pace was more like an afternoon stroll. Dustless had mastered the beginner skill of treading water decades ago. Chapter 6:18. On the endless sea, a single figure is clearly visible, stepping on the sea, looming in the heavy clouds, giving people an unfathomable feeling. Sometimes it's just a small step, but it gives people the illusion that they have moved hundreds of meters. Bucky Pirate. Captain has a bounty of Bucky the Clown with a bounty of 15 million berries. They are also former crew members of One Piece, but they are different. Looking at the bounty list in his hand, Dustless was quite puzzled. Shanks and Bucky are both Roger's crew members, but their strength and status seem to be different. Dustless, who wanted to tease Bucky, suddenly lost his mind. He thought that Bucky might be hiding his strength, and there must be other unknown conspiracies and purposes in the dark. Looking at the huge red nose on the bounty list, Dustless guessed that this guy is a character who is responsible for comedy. After the identity of the honorary admiral was exposed, the world knew that Dustless came to East Blue. Although it was very secretive and unknown, there is no impenetrable wall in the world, and the pirates who heard the news along the way fled in a hurry. Rumble. The Den Den Mushi in his arms rang, and the special Den Den Mushi was used by Dustless to communicate with Sengoku. There is a big problem in the Sabaody archipelago, and the Tenryubito living there was beaten. Without waiting for Dustless to speak, Sengoku's anxious tone suddenly came, with unprecedented puzzlement and entanglement. During his time as the fleet admiral, it seems that no good things have happened, and the news all day long is bad news that makes him vomit blood. Tenryubito was beaten. What does it have to do with me? Hearing this, Dustless asked, with the meaning that it has nothing to do with him. This. Asked by Dustless, Sengoku was suddenly speechless. When Dustless was an honorary admiral, he made 3 rules and could refuse to obey the orders of the fleet admiral. However, now that the Tenryubito was beaten, only an admiral can solve the problem. Sengoku can only find Dustless to solve the crisis for him. No matter what, you are of the same race. You should work together. After pondering for a long time, Sengoku found an extremely lame reason to fool Dustless, a reason that even he couldn't convince himself. Then there was a lot of coaxing and pestering. The warring states signed many unequal treaties which barely moved Dustless. That damn bastard really knows how to stir up trouble. Seeing that Dustless agreed, Sengoku breathed a sigh of relief. His voice was filled with deep exhaustion. During the Marine Fleet Admiral period, nothing good happened. This is normal. Not all pirates are afraid of celestial dragons. It's natural for the pigs to be beaten. Dustless is calm as usual. Tenryubito thinks too highly of himself. At the same time, he also underestimates the blood of some pirates. There are a lot of pirates like Luffy who are full of blood. Once they are impulsive, it is not impossible for them to violently beat Tenryubito. Moreover, some pirates who are proud of their strength will not put Tenryubito in their eyes at all. For example, Kaido is a Yonko for emperors. Tenryubito has no deterrence in front of them. The only thing that Dustless is curious about is that the pirate who dared to beat Tenryubito doesn't know who he is. Damn Admiral, how can he appear in such a place? In the distance, a battleship was hidden in the clouds. The clown buggy looked at the distant sea with binoculars. Dustless came into sight and made him sweat and weak. East Blue is a small place that no one cares about and is even forgotten. Not to mention a Marine Admiral, even a Rear Admiral doesn't exist, because East Blue is recognized as the weakest sea among the 4 seas. Raise the sails, let's get away quickly. After a moment of contemplation, Buggy took back his binoculars and ordered the crew. There is no need for an admiral to do it. A rear admiral can easily disintegrate their pirate group. Staying here and being found is just looking for death. They will be crushed like ants. Oh, please give me a ride. Just as Buggy sighed at his wit and took advantage of the situation to slip away, a slightly annoyed complaint suddenly came to his ears. Sengoku is really ordering people around. This is East Blue. It's not far from the Sabaody archipelago. I can only ask you to give me a ride, but it's best to delay the time. Looking at the figure that suddenly appeared in front of him, Buggy seemed to be unable to accept it for a while. He wiped the corner of his eyes and thought it was his illusion. After a few seconds of silence, the Buggy pirates burst into a pig-like scream. The Admiral is here. Within about a minute, the entire battleship was filled with this kind of ear-piercing screams, and Dustless subconsciously covered his ears. Looking at the clown Buggy, Dustless keenly smelled a different feeling. His sharp eyes went straight to the clown Buggy's eyes. His clear eyes saw through his inner thoughts. Although this guy looks like he has seen a ghost on the surface, he is actually very calm. This is interesting. Staring at Buggy with interest, Dustless was quite surprised. Although on the surface this guy is a comedic character, Dustless still sees the difference in him. Even if his eyes almost fall out, it can still be noticed that the clown Buggy is actually very calm and there is no kind of panic. It's all a disguise, I said. Once a crew member of One Piece, Roger Red Hair Shanks, even if his strength is low, he shouldn't have mixed up to this point. This guy must have an ulterior motive for hiding in East Blue. Looking back, Dustless secretly guessed. After a while he was too lazy to think about it. Everyone has an unknown secret. If he wants to explore the origin of all this, even if his life is infinite, it is not enough. Dustless doesn't have the leisure to care about the clown Buggy. Take me to the Sabaody archipelago so I can let you go. Anyway, I'm just a trainee marine. Looking at Buggy lazily, Dustless casually found a couch to sleep. This kid is very smooth. He should know what is the most correct choice. Chapter 619. Seeing that Dustless was so casual, falling asleep on the couch and even hearing a slight snoring sound, the clown Buggy suddenly had a feeling of crying without tears. Not to mention being stared at by a Marine Admiral for no reason, the other side still wanted to stay on his ship. This is more uncomfortable than eating 100 tons of flies. Many pirates around him were holding big swords and were trying to make a name for themselves, but they were stared back by Buggy's ferocious eyes. If a Marine Admiral was so easy to kill, the world government should have been destroyed hundreds of years ago. This guy, forget it, I can only go to the Sabaody archipelago. After thinking about it, Buggy decided to go to the Sabaody archipelago. He had carefully hidden and planned for many years, and it was unwise to suddenly meet a Marine Admiral. What's more, Dustless only said that he would temporarily give him a ride. Although Marines' words are often more untrustworthy than pirates, Buggy chose to listen to Dustless. What's more, going to the Sabaody archipelago is just the right time to secretly visit Pluto Rayleigh. They haven't seen each other for many years. Why are you still standing there foolishly? Hurry up and start the ship. Our destination is the Sabaody archipelago. The clown Buggy rolled his eyes and shouted loudly. He was afraid that Wu Qing couldn't hear him, so he raised his voice. He scolded the crew in his heart. With their strength, it would take at least 20 years of hard work to fight a Marine admiral. Although the Marine admiral in front of him is young, there is no doubt that he is an admiral. The Marine headquarters will not do that kind of boring stupid thing. Being able to sit in the position of a Marine admiral at such a young age shows that this person's ability is extraordinary and his strength is superior. Surprisingly smart. Dustless, who was squinting, opened his eyes and looked quietly at Buggy, who was giving orders, and nodded secretly. The ferocious eagle often keeps his claws closed. Only when he finds the right opportunity and a suitable prey will he reveal his sharp claws that are enough to tear the skull. Obviously, Dustless is not his prey. And Buggy also knows that a duel is ever-changing. Maybe in just a moment the identity of each other will change dramatically. Instead, he turned from a hunter to a prey waiting to be slaughtered. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. Buggy was quite forthright. Although he was a little narrow-minded, sometimes he could clearly distinguish between right and wrong. During this period he also took out wine and meat to entertain Dustless and even started a party. At first, Dustless thought that Buggy was going to use some drugs to cheat him. After trying a few mouthfuls he found that he was overthinking. Dustless couldn't help but have a whole new level of respect for him. After 3 days of ups and downs, they arrived at the Sabaody archipelago. Dustless also fulfilled his promise and did not attack Buggy's pirates and slipped away for them. He thought that everything would be over when he arrived at the Sabaody archipelago. He didn't expect that the entire island would be surrounded by densely packed navies. Not even a fly could fly out. The ones leading the encirclement were Sakazuki and Kazan. As for Borsellino, he had already gone with Bartholomew Bear to be Vegapunk's mice. Louis South, this young master has been beaten up. Why did you take so long to arrive? Ouch, it hurts. As soon as he walked into the temporary tent, a pig-like scream entered Dustless's ears. He looked up and saw Charles Ross, whom Mariehua had met last time. His appearance was as ugly as a pig, and the old face on the left side had been beaten and swollen, making the ugly face even more disgusting. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He was very curious about how Charles Ross could grow up to look like this. Perhaps it was a miracle that he could grow up like this. On the other hand, the female celestial dragon beside him was quite beautiful. She was Chalmers' sister, called Shalulia. This unlucky guy. After secretly scolding him for being an idiot, Dustless was speechless. This guy has a face that deserves a beating. Last time, Mariehua was thrown into the garbage by him, and this time she was beaten up by a pirate. If he remembers correctly, in the future the protagonist of the Beat the Flying Dragonians incident, the one who was beaten by Luffy, was also Charles Ross. Make it clear to me, Charles Ross, I came to the Sabaody archipelago because someone else asked me for help. You pig, you are not in my rescue scope. Whether you live or die, you have to pray for yourself. His casual words were filled with contempt, and Chalmers was so angry that he fainted. You guy, we are all of the same race, how can you be so ruthless? Charles Ross's sister, Shalulia, asked angrily, her eyes burning with anger. Same race? Raising his eyes, he looked at her with pity. The unlucky guy in front of him was the female Tenryubito who was stunned by Dark King Rayleigh's haki. In fact, it's not impossible to ask me to catch the pirate who hurt your brother, but... Dustless's words made Shalulia's little face excited, but after seeing what Dustless took out, her white face turned red. I just need a slave to serve tea and water. If you are willing to put it on, I will fulfill your wish. Shaking the black collar in his hand, Dustless said with a generous face. Inside the tent, the naval officers bit their lips as they watched the scene unfold. Their faces twitched as if they wanted to laugh but didn't dare. Even Sakazuki, who was usually old-fashioned, had the same expression on his face, a strange expression on his face. Keeping silent, they were not qualified to intervene in the affairs of the Tenryubito. If they say too much, it will only lead to trouble. You should thank me for this kind of good thing. Not everyone can be my slave. If you are willing to take the initiative to put on the collar, I promise to arrest the murderer who hurt your brother. Dustless patted his chest and promised, mercilessly adding fuel to the fire. His expression was full of confidence. The implication was that if you don't want to put it on, your brother's enemy will also escape. Chapter 620. Shalulia's pretty face turned red, and she pointed to Dustless, who was sitting in a chair, biting her thin lips. She never thought that someone would dare to talk to her like this one day. To actually want her, a celestial dragon person, to be a slave, really daring. What made Shalilia most difficult to accept was Wu Chen's aggrieved appearance, as if he had suffered a great loss and suffered great pain. Xiaolilia almost wanted to vomit blood. Wu Chen's reluctant look was like a thorn piercing into her heart, trampling on her arrogant self-esteem until it was worthless, leaving an impression that could never be erased. The black collar of the exclusive slave in Dustless's hand is like a stick, and a heavy blow makes her confused and confused. Even if she has a stomach full of anger, there is no place to vent it. You are a Marine Admiral. It is your duty to protect the celestial dragons. Shalilia shouted at Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless smiled and shrugged. I'm just a trainee admiral. If you can get Sengoku to relieve me of my duties, I'll take care of you. His indifferent look made Shalilia angry, and she felt like she had met a natural enemy. She was full of anger, but there was no suitable target to vent it. Celestial dragons will be beaten by a Marine Admiral, but celestial dragons beating celestial dragons is beyond the jurisdiction of the Marine. What's more, Dustless himself is a celestial dragon and also a Marine Admiral. Even if she is unwilling, she can only endure it. Her brother was thrown into the garbage dump by Dustless. If she angered Dustless, she may be forced to become a slave. Thinking about it, Shalilia felt a chill. Is this how you Marines work? Useless waste. The angry Shalilia yelled at the Marines in the tent, making all the Marine admirals frown and quietly extinguish their anger at the same time. The exaggerated identity of the celestial dragons made them not dare to act rashly and could only swallow their anger. Compared to your useless older brother, I feel that he's more like a piece of trash. No, at the very least, some pieces of trash still have value, while your older brother's value can be compared to a pig. No, at the very least, a pig can be slaughtered for a full meal, but eating your older brother is more fatal than eating poison. Dustless said indifferently as he looked indifferently at Shalilia. Dustless mercilessly mocked Charles, who had fainted from anger. Sakazuki and Kazan were afraid of the power of the celestial dragons, but he was not. Dustless had also killed a celestial dragon before, and he was still alive. You win. Every dog has its day. Just wait and see. Glancing fiercely at Dustless, Shalilia flew into a rage out of humiliation as she looked at Dustless's face. She waved her hand and gestured for her subordinates to take Chalmers, who was lying on the stretcher, away. She then turned around and left without hesitation. Being in the same room as Dustless might shorten his life by 10 years. Sakazuki, who did it? Daring to attack a celestial dragon. Touching his smooth chin, Dustless's eyes lit up with curiosity. The one who attacked the celestial dragons was either a hothead like Luffy or a top expert comparable to an admiral. At the very least, he was extremely conceited about his own strength. He thought that even if he was faced with the pursuit of a Marine admiral, he would be able to retreat safely. Sakazuki's expression was stiff, and his hoarse voice was a little embarrassed. When we came, the group had already run away. We don't know who did it for the time being. Dustless nodded, indicating that he could understand. The Marine headquarters was some distance away from the Sabaody archipelago. When they arrived, the group of pirates had already fled in a hurry. As for the idiot Chalmers, he didn't even see who it was before he was hit on the spot and fainted. About half an hour later, Sakazuki explained the cause of the matter. Chalmers and a pirate had a dispute over the devil fruit. Compared with the celestial dragons, the pirate naturally couldn't fight. As a result, he could only grab the devil fruit that Chalmers spent hundreds of millions of berries to buy. It was said that the devil fruit at the auction belongs to the Paramecia system and can treat various diseases of the human body. But there are many famous pirates on the island, and there are many with a bounty of more than 100 million berries. Kazan said with a hint of eagerness to try. The same is true for Sakazuki and other Marines. Do as you like. Remember to catch all the pirates. I won't accompany you. With a wave of his hand, Dustless gave the hard work to Sakazuki and Kazan. He was not interested in those minions. Akainu and others looked at each other and didn't talk nonsense. They left the tent. About a few minutes later, the ground suddenly throbbed and trembled slightly. Dustless, who was resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes and asked softly, "What's the matter, White Zetsu?" White Zetsu's clones are all over the world's islands. Wherever people live, there are traces of White Zetsu, and the Sabaody archipelago is no exception. The pirate who stole the devil fruit from the celestial dragons is Green Pepper's subordinate. It seems that he wants to use that fruit to cure Green Pepper's bald head. The whole island is secretly full of White Zetsu's clones, and it's easy to get information. Boring. Hearing this, Dustless shook his head. It's just green pepper. In his heyday, his bounty is only more than 500 million berries. Even if his bald head is cured, it is estimated that his strength is about the level of an admiral. In addition, there are other pirates. By the way, Law, that kid seems to be in the Sabaody archipelago. White Zetsu said as he thought of the childish figure. Dustless's precise eyes suddenly flashed with interest, and he asked in a deep voice, "How is that kid's strength now? Is he capable of performing the ultimate surgery?" White Zetsu shook his head. He really doesn't know. Anyway, Law has made rapid progress over the years. Almost all the people who fought with him were cruelly beheaded by him. Among them, there are some pirates with more than 100 million bounties. Corazone's death left an unforgettable impression on Law, which is also the source and motivation for his continuous progress. Chapter 621. With the arrival of Dustless, Marines who had only blocked the entire island, suddenly became rampant and turned from defense to active attack. For a time, the entire Sabaody archipelago became chaotic. The Marines from all directions rushed into the depths of the island like hungry wolves, and the chickens and dogs were restless. Pirates and Marines are two natural enemies. When they get together, they can only fight. If they don't fight to the death, it will be difficult for both sides to calm down. The hatred passed down from generation to generation has been settled for a long time. It really can't be resolved. Above the giant mangrove in the Sabaody archipelago, Dustless and White Zetsu stood on the branches and looked down at the battlefield in the distance. White Zetsu couldn't help but sigh. The product of Yin-Yang release is surprisingly sentimental. Turning his head, Dustless faintly said, "The person who created White Zetsu is him." White Zetsu just smiled. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. White Zetsu has no scruples. He knows Dustless's temperament and will not make a big fuss over such a trivial matter. The implication is that the sentimental character is inherited from Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless just glanced at White Zetsu indifferently, and his calm tone was emotionless. "I haven't seen you for a while. I didn't expect you to have a sharp tongue." "Hey, this is also inherited from you." White Zetsu grinned. Everything he has was given to him by Dustless. His character and hidden skills were all inherited from Dustless. It is another portrayal of Dustless. There seemed to be two little mice moving below. His eyes drooped down and scanned the pirates below. Dustless's body flashed with photons and then turned into a straight beam of light roaring down. Boom, 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 the earth was suddenly hit by a fierce impact and it trembled fiercely. The surrounding ground was lifted up by tens of centimeters in an instant, and then a huge fire was swept up out of thin air. The fire was everywhere and it was full of a burnt smell which was nauseating. Looking closely, it turned out to be the corpses of the pirates in a large deep pit. When doctors face patients on the operating table, they are very calm. It's rare to see a doctor who treats patients while panting like you. Dustless said as he turned his head and looked at the young figure wearing a hat. He was wearing a fluffy winter fur hat with leopard spots. His eyes had dark eye bags and two small golden earrings on each ear. It was Trafalgar Law. "I'm sorry, but I'm a quack. I only know how to kill people. Saving people is not my specialty, especially when it's the guy who almost killed me." Law's forehead was sweating and beads of sweat kept dripping down. At this moment, the clothes on his upper body were burned. He stared at Dustless warily. His eyes were shining from time to time, and his face was ferocious. It was clear that he had become much stronger after wandering alone for so many years. Under the shadow of Corazone's death, he had trained day and night to achieve his current results. "Did you avoid the range of the lightspeed kick?" Turning around and putting his hands in his trouser pockets, Dustless said lazily, "If I were you, I would run away quickly. Staying here is almost certain death. Or do you dare to stand here calmly because you think you have the ability to face the strength of a Marine Admiral alone?" His eyes were fixed on Law. Compared with the original kid, Law has grown up a lot. He is 15 or 16 years old and has also inherited the abnormal physique of the world's humans. At a young age, he is taller than Dustless, who is nearly 1.8 meters tall. Running away is a stupid thing that only an idiot would do. Under your speed, running away is meaningless. It's better to keep your strength and fight. Luo said resolutely as his torch-like eyes locked onto Wu Qin. As a pirate, he naturally has an understanding of the top fighting power of the Marine. Their speed is enough to keep pace with the speed of light. Escaping is just a fantasy. Instead of that, it's better to fight to the death with all his strength. You're smart, but in my eyes you're still stupid. Playing a game of hide-and-seek may give you a chance to live. Dustless chuckled. He just regarded Law as a clown. Now he is still too far away. Room. Looking at the opportunity, Law released the ability of the fruit and created a transparent hemispherical space. The transparent space was not quite large. In an instant, it wrapped Dustless's whole body and completely isolated him from the outside world. In this mysterious space, it seems to be a different small world, isolated from the world. As an admiral of the Marine, you must have heard of my ability. At the moment when he released Room, Law's tight heart relaxed. Only when Wuxia was trapped in Room's encirclement did he feel that he had a chance of winning. Nicknamed Surgeon of Death, Surgeon Fruit ability, Tragafar Law. But what do you think this can change just because you are a Surgeon Fruit ability? Dustless asked with a sneer on his face. To be honest, except for the ability of Ageless Surgery, the other abilities of Surgeon Fruit have no bright spots. Hearing this, Law's eyes flashed with a fierce light and said confidently, everything within the range of Room is under my control. Even if it is a Logia ability, it will be hurt by me. The high-frequency electric shock of the automatic electric shock controlled within the space range causes the organs of the person who is hit to be damaged by the high-frequency current flowing all over the body. It can even cut the target into several pieces. Even the Logia ability can't immediately restore the original appearance. I've been talking nonsense for a long time, but I still haven't seen you do it. Since you don't do it, then don't blame me for bullying you. After that, Dustless's body glowed with countless luster and whizzed out. In just a moment he came to Law's side and condensed his shining calf and kicked straight at his abdomen. Chapter 622. Law's pupils suddenly shrank and he did not hesitate to put his hands in front of him. He was ready for the defensive impact, but the dazzling flash suddenly subsided as if nothing had happened. It was strangely calm. Law was stunned and opened his eyes subconsciously. Dustless came into view with a playful smile on his face, looking at him playfully, standing in front of Law, his thumb closed and then lightly flicked toward Law's face. The air splashed with ripples, and the air waves visible to the naked eye spread out. Boom! Law, who was caught off guard, was suddenly hit, and there were obvious bloated marks on his forehead. The blood-red scars were clearly visible. He suffered an unprecedented heavy blow. His face was as pale as paper, like a willow branch drifting with the waves in the storm. He was vulnerable. Why, is your strength just like that, Law? It seems that Corazon's death did not hit you hard enough, and your hatred is not deep enough, otherwise you would not be so fragile. Looking at Law with disdain, Dustless shook his head sarcastically, and his face was full of naked disdain. Your confident look just now, was it all for Corazon to see? I really feel sorry for Corazon. Hearing this, Law's eyes flashed with violent killing intent, his eyes turned scarlet, and he stared at Dustless unkindly. This look is good, but your appearance is a waste of this sharp look. It gives people a feeling of blindness, that is, it's a slap in the face. Shaking his head hopelessly, Dustless looked at Law, whose face was getting darker and darker, and did not hesitate to add fuel to the fire. Once he thought that this kid could do immortality surgery, he would not hesitate to use genjutsu to control him. Wuxia was now able to be immortal and indestructible. His female confidants were still unable to reach this level. He could only control Luo to temporarily use it on one of them. This is also the fundamental purpose of Dustless's control of Law. This kid has no outstanding ability in other aspects. The reason why he is stimulated is to force out his strength and see if he has the strength to do immortality surgery now. Clang clang clang, the wild sword in his hand was unsheathed and condensed into a cold light. Law's eyes were isolated from the world, like 10,000 years of ice and inhuman. Dustless made a frightened expression and looked at Law in fear. I hope you can still be so smug later. With a livid face, Law lost his calm and roared angrily. Corazon is Law's reverse scale and the person he respects the most. Just now, he caught the contempt and disdain in Dustless's tone, which has indirectly aroused Law's killing intent. Room, slaughterhouse. Aiming at the tiny loopholes in Dustless's body, Luo Yidao swept out. He thought that he could easily divide Dustless, but the unexpected scene made him stunned. Clang clang clang, Dustless stood quietly in the same place, without the slightest discomfort in his body, but there would be a roaring impact of steel, which could not shake him at all. It was extremely difficult to force Dustless to move his feet, let alone divide him. The strangest thing is that Dustless's whole body is covered with black dark skin, like steel integrated with the skin, which is extremely strong. What is this? Law's tone, with surprise and doubt, muttered to himself incredulously. After wandering in North Blue for so many years, he has seen such a strange ability for the first time. His throat twitched unconsciously, and Law's face was full of amazement. He saw this strange scene for the first time. Is this the rumored armament hockey? Thinking of the legend of armament hockey, Law was shocked. This is the first time he has met someone who can use armament hockey, especially this kind of whole-body armament hockey, which is unheard of. He didn't expect that this kind of trick, which can touch the body of Logia's fruit, can also defend against his surgeon fruit. The clang steel impact that came from Dustless's body was actually his attack. But it did not cause any substantial damage, and even Dustless's skin did not break. Your surgeon fruit is very good, it is invincible, but if you think you can defeat me with this special attack, it is tantamount to a fool's dream. Dustless, who entered the state of armament hockey, said indifferently. The ability of surgeon fruit is unsolvable. In the special space created by Law, everything is dominated by him, and armament hockey can be defended to a certain extent. In the future, Doflamingo will use armament hockey to defend against Law's slaughterhouse. Do you think your ability is invincible and you can do whatever you want? Every day there are many pirates on the Grand Line who think so, but they all end up dead. Dustless, who was shining with black light, said. There are countless pirates who have the ability of surgeon fruit, but in the end they still step into the abyss of hell, which also shows that there is no invincible ability in this world, and the key is comprehensive ability in all aspects. No, I can't die yet, I have to avenge Corazon. Law roared hysterically as he stared at Dustless, who was slowly approaching. Dustless didn't take a step forward, and his heart would be depressed and desperate. This monster with black paint and steel bones is enough to defend against all attacks. It is no different from invincible. His attack and defense are perfect. It is almost impossible to shake him. Fragile. Seeing Law's eyes flickering, Dustless had already guessed that he was exhausted and had done his best. Boom. In the special space created by Law, it had no effect on Dustless at all, and he flew out with a punch. Ka. The mangrove trees that build the Sabaody archipelago were smashed and trembled, showing how fierce the force was. The meaning of armament hockey is actually the same as Concisanu. Although it is not as powerful as Concisanu, it is more flexible and can move freely. It is easier to control than Consisanu's bulky body. And the power of armament hockey is also quite good. Chapter 623. Although its power is not as great as that of Concisanu, it also has advantages, each has its own strengths and weaknesses, and it all depends on the geographical environment. A place like the Sabaody archipelago may not be able to withstand the complete Consisanu's knife and it will be dismembered. There is no need to do that to an exaggerated extent. Cough. His throat couldn't help but vomit blood stains, and his abdomen was hit by Dustless's heavy punch, and there were already traces of depression, and he was only one step away from completely stepping into the coffin. If it weren't for Dustless's deliberate mercy, Law's abdomen would have become a bloody hole and been penetrated by the powerful force of armament hockey. Do you still want to stand up? Your willpower is strong. Seeing Law's face, Dustless nodded slightly and did not hesitate to give a look of appreciation. Although in the eyes of Dustless, Law is now as fragile as a sheep and can be killed at will, it is undeniable that this guy has been practicing hard all year round and has honed the heart of a strong man. In the future there will definitely be a place for him in the vast sea. However, fate is ruthless and he is regarded as something in the bag by Dustless, the big hungry wolf. His fate has been doomed. Dustless glanced at Law and then took it back. He had no intention of killing him, at least not now. He walked away with his head held high, but Law's unwillingness to give up sounded in his ears. Mr. Corazon said that the race with D in the name can turn something rotten into something magical. I can't lie here. Since D can do what people can't do, how can I lie in this ghost place? Turning his head and glancing at him with pity, Dustless sighed that he was poisoned too deeply. Sometimes when you know too much, you will feel that your fate is full of twists and turns, and your life is full of ups and downs and things are changeable. Like a clown, you will be played by the karma set by God, and you will only suffer more blows and even distort your heart. If you don't know this, everything will not be so complicated, but you will live happily and not be distressed by intrigues. Sometimes ignorance is also a kind of happiness. What can you do if you are D? You are not Monkey D. Luffy. There is no protagonist aura. Sweeping him, Dustless raised his thumb and gathered golden photons in the front, condensed into a small golden dot, pointed at Law's body and shot straight out. Laser Pucci, the whistling light easily penetrated Law, leaving a bloody hole in his left shoulder. After several tortures, he finally fell to the ground with serious injuries in his consciousness. These injuries may be fatal to ordinary people, but for pirates like Law who are constantly training themselves, although they are serious, they are not fatal because Dustless deliberately avoids the vital organs of his body. From the point of view of a genius doctor like Luo, even if he could not operate on himself, there was still a way to save his life. Boom, boom, the ground suddenly trembled and a strong storm swooped down. The pirates and marines who were fighting around were hit by this strong impact. Their eyes turned white and their mouths frothed as they were stunned. This unparalleled Haushikuhaki. There is such a powerful character on this island. This kind of pure Haushikuhaki is already considered to be perfect. It is very rare in the second half of the Grand Line. Dustless's eyes lit up and he was a little surprised. In his mind he could vaguely see a figure with an arrogant face and a big belly. The figure's bright eyes were filled with contempt, looking at everyone with disdain. Mr. General. That old man Green Pepperall went berserk. The Marine officer who hurried over said with a tone of anxiety and urgency. He even ignored the unconscious Law lying on the ground. Compared with Green Pepper, this kid is just a random fish on the side of the road, not worth mentioning. What about Sakazuki and Kazan? Dustless asked calmly. Both of them already have the strength of an admiral, but their ranks are still vice admirals. Together they can definitely capture Green Pepper and it's easy to stop him. No matter how powerful Green Pepper is in his heyday, he can't resist the siege of two admirals. There are too many pirates on the island, and some of them are mysterious masters. Sakazuki and Mr. Akiji are tied down by them to deal with other pirates. Dustless frowned when he heard this. He didn't remember any masters in the Sabaody archipelago. Is it him? The figure of Pluto Rayleigh popped up in his mind. Dustless secretly guessed. Rayleigh is still in his peak period and is not as old as he will be in the future. If it's him, it's not a problem to contain either Sakazuki or Kazan. Boom! Another monstrous momentum spread out, rolling up bursts of smoke and dust, like a wild beast breaking out of its cage, venting the madness in its heart. That guy is really arrogant. Garp made him bald in the past and he didn't learn anything. Now he's coming out to make trouble. Do you think I'll let you slip away like Garp? His eyes were cold and his overbearing eyes looked through the dense forest. He saw a strong old man who could shatter the earth with a wave of his hand. It's worth mentioning that at this moment, Green Pepper no longer showed any signs of going bald. His head was like a sharp thorn. Dustless could even see the arrogant smile on his face. Green Pepper may be retaliating against Mr. Garp for leaving him a shadow, the Marine who came to inform Green Pepper said bitterly. Garp offended him, but he didn't dare to find trouble with him. Instead he bullied these small fries. It's ridiculous. On the contrary, Wu Qin looked at Green Pepper indifferently and sighed sadly. It's a pity that the head that just recovered is going to be bald again. In addition, he will be imprisoned in a dark place like Impel Down. But this is also his own fault, he can't blame anyone else. Dustless said to himself emotionlessly. If he was Green Pepper, he would run away immediately and stay away from this place. Chapter 624. There is no need to show off just because he has some strength. There are countless strong people in this world and there will always be someone stronger. Now Don Chinjo is quite unlucky to meet Dustless, a butcher who kills without blinking. He can only blame him for being arrogant, thinking that he can be invincible and despise everything in the world. Everything needs to be looked at with equal eyes, and the appearance of colored glasses also means that this person has arrogance. Now Don Chinjo is like this. After a moment of contemplation, Dustless took him to the center of Don Chinjo's chaos. The geology has undergone amazing changes, and the broken ground is like a spider web in a mess, reflecting Don Chinjo's strength is indeed extraordinary. A duel with the strength of an admiral can change the surrounding environment without any effort. 10,000 Mammoth Heaven. Gently lifting his palm, a narrow black hole appeared in Dustless's palm, exuding a majestic gravitational force. The unscrupulous Don Chinjo suddenly realized the existence of Dustless, his sharp eyes vaguely flashed with dazzling lightning, and his cold eyes went straight to Dustless. "Admiral?" Aware of Dustless's location, Don Chinjo said. Eyes narrowed, aware of the gravitational force enveloping his body, Don Chinjo's breathing stagnated, his face full of horror, sharp eyes looking at Dustless, full of vigilance. The youngest admiral in history, this is what the outside world calls Dustless. Although he is the so-called honorary admiral, no one cares about that these days. Stepping into the position of an admiral at a young age indirectly means that he is a monster with superior strength. Tense nerves, trying to stabilize his body with all his strength, but being constantly pulled by the powerful gravitational force, any resistance is useless. Go to hell. Seeing that he can't stop his body, Don Chinjo roared and turned from defense to offense. With the traction of gravity like a cannonball, he rushed to Dustless's face, the spiked head covered with armament hockey like an electric drill, spinning at a crazy high speed. It is self-evident what will happen to a normal human being if hit by this. Garp has already hit your head, but looking at your impulsive appearance, it should be, seeing Green Pepper advancing instead of retreating, the gravitational force in Dustless's hands suddenly extinguished. He opened his arms to embrace the sky, and a force that was completely opposite to the previous gravitational force swept out of thin air. Shinra Tensei. Bang! The strange repulsive force was so powerful that Chinjo, who was caught off guard, was sent flying. A long and narrow crack appeared on the ground, and he fell heavily to the ground. His strength wasn't very strong, so Green Pepper, who had a frightening physique, was only slightly injured. An ability to combine both offense and defense. How troublesome. Staring at Dustless, Don Chinjo secretly guessed. The top of his head turned black again, covered with a higher density of armament hockey. Standing up and staring at Dustless, Don Chinjo's eyes were not filled with fear, instead they were full of fighting spirit. Lasers. A straight beam of light whizzed over, and Green Pepper, who had been so pleased with himself, was immediately engulfed. His entire body was engulfed in flames, and his entire being was annihilated by the crimson flames. Sneak attack. You Marines are as despicable as ever. Chinjo's slightly angry roar came out of the fire, and then a dark giant stepped out of the flames. The powerful roar mixed with the presence of a domineering presence spread to every corner of the island. Sneak attack? Have you become so arrogant after recovering your full strength? Do you think you are worthy of my sneak attack? A ghostly whisper without warning rang in Chinjo's ears. Suddenly, he turned his head and saw a golden calf whizzing over. Lightspeed kick. The voice was full of ruthlessness, and the power condensed on the foot was full of indifference. A merciless kick fell, and Chinjo was suddenly nowhere to be seen. Boom, boom, boom. The black shadow that was kicked out hit a large building, and in an instant, it was smashed into pieces and turned into countless broken walls. Chinjo was lying among them, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. It's not a sneak attack, you must have realized. Your huge body is not enough to keep up with my speed. As for the sneak attack, you are just deceiving yourself. The cold voice spread out, Dustless said expressionlessly. Human reaction nerves are limited, and the speed of light is beyond the scope of human seriousness. Even if he can perceive the existence of Dustless through observation hockey, he can't keep up with his attack frequency. It will create the illusion of a sneak attack, but in fact, Dustless is rushing in a straight line. Dustless's speed is too fast, and it is not an exaggeration to describe it as 10,000 miles in a glance. Although the distance of movement is limited, in Chinjo's eyes it is such an exaggerated speed. Through observation hockey, he can predict and even locate Dustless's foothold, but he can't make a counterattack to keep up with the speed of light frequency. In particular, Chinjo's body is huge and it is more difficult for him to move. Boom, 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 a golden brilliance suddenly rose into the sky, full of dangerous fluctuations, and then scattered like a storm, and the broken walls that Chinjo was buried deep in instantly turned into ruins. It turned into negligible powder floating in the sky. The power of the lightspeed kick is obviously not comparable to the laser, and there are obvious bloodstains on Chinjo's left shoulder, and there are traces of depression. Looking at Dustless angrily, Chinjo's killing intent is obvious. Even if you stare at me so fiercely, I won't be merciful. Golden photons appeared all over his body, and in an instant he turned into a flash of light, and then swept straight into the sky. The photons floating in the air recombined and condensed, and Dustless's face appeared. The dangerous light condensed in the palm of his hand, covering an unprecedented vast area, and anyone who is shrouded in the golden light will feel a sense of horror. Yasakani no Magatama. After a while, the flash poured down like a rainstorm, and the number of boundless flashes can't be calculated, and the whole sky was dyed with a dazzling golden color. Armament haki hardening. Seeing this, Chinjo's face twitched and his face turned green. He did not hesitate to use his whole body's armament haki to defend himself. This kind of horrible attack made it meaningless to escape. Chapter 625. The individual attack power of the Yasakani no Magatama may not be very strong, but it has a wide range and a dense number of attacks, which can completely make up for the lack of power. Quantity can change quality. This is the iron principle summed up by the ancient sages. Boom boom boom. Sharp whistling sounds continued to reverberate through the air as the mighty energy tide swallowed Green Pepper whole. In the blink of an eye he was annihilated. Coincidentally, Don Chinjo also became a shining person in an instant, his whole body shrouded in a bright brilliance. Clang clang clang. The roar of steel continued, countless light bullets tried to invade Don Chinjo's body, not letting go of every inch of his skin, ruthlessly destroying it. Even with the defense of armament haki, Dustless could vaguely hear the painful howls. Although the defense of armament haki is amazing, it depends on who the opponent is. You are worthy of the person who once needed Lieutenant General Garp to personally deal with. Your strength is really extraordinary. Dustless's pupils were slightly enlarged and he chuckled. After a while, the sky dyed golden became clear, and Don Chinjo was also exposed to Dustless's sight. Insincere little brat, this old man will definitely double the revenge. Don Chinjo gritted his teeth and said hatefully. The hostility in his words was so strong that he wanted to tear Dustless into pieces. Looking closely, Don Chinjo's body was covered with countless small sunken spots and bright red blood stains, all thanks to Dustless's Yasakani no Magatama. Don't be so fierce. Anyway, I didn't kill you. Dustless shrugged and he didn't care. Hearing this, Don Chinjo's face stiffened, and his murderous aura almost solidified. His nose was crooked and he thought in his heart, if I die, how can I take revenge? Don Chinjo said in a strange tone, I hope you don't regret it. In my life, I have never known how to write the word regret. If you have the ability, just come at me, no need to talk nonsense. Dustless's body landed on the ground and he smiled indifferently. Giving Dustless a fierce look, Don Chinjo's feet suddenly slammed on the ground, and his huge body ignored the existence of gravity and jumped dozens of meters high. Whoosh! Don Chinjo, who was in midair, rotated his body at high speed and threw out a hurricane. His sharp head turned black in an instant, covered with armament haki that could penetrate everything. This move uses the sharp head to crush the target with the force of the fall. It's quite exaggerated. Dustless nodded. Hearing this, Green Pepper, who was hovering in the air, couldn't help but feel a burst of anger. No matter how hard he tried to suppress it, he couldn't calm himself down. Since you're exaggerating, you should at least show a shocked expression. Even if you don't respect the elderly and love the young, you should at least respect the feelings of the elderly. Don't say one thing but do another. Ba Chong Quan, Dragon All Nail, Green Pepper opening door. Seeing that Dustless was standing on the ground and not dodging, Green Pepper's eyes flashed with an ominous glint. He then used all the strength in his body to dive down. The power gathered in his sharp head was enough to easily disintegrate a mountain. Back then he had used this move to crash into the ice continent. Just one hit was enough to create a large crack that was several kilometers long and tens of meters deep on the thick ice surface. The Sabaody archipelago was likely to collapse under the impact. You can escape like a stray dog. Anyway, this island that has suffered a heavy blow will definitely be buried with this old man's resentment. At that time, the reputation of the Marine headquarters will also be swept away. Green Pepper raised his head and laughed wildly. At the same time, he looked at Dustless from the corner of his eyes, but he didn't change his expression. Because Dustless had made him bald in the past, Green Pepper had always held a grudge against the Marine. Especially when he was trampled on by Dustless, his inner dignity had been insulted. Escape? Don't even dream about it. Dustless looked up at the falling Green Pepper with his calm eyes. He hugged the sky with his hands and gave up the idea of using armament haki to fight back. Dustless had only been practicing armament haki for a short time. Although he had great achievements, he was still not as good as Green Pepper, who had been playing armament hockey for most of his life. He naturally knew how to use it. If he tried to fight back, he would only break his head. Shinra Tensei. Dustless's clothes suddenly fluttered, and a repulsive force broke out of his body, forming a perfect 360-degree defense, protecting Dustless from the impact of Green Pepper. Boom. Kacha. Shinra Tensei's defense was obviously not enough to resist Green Pepper. The repulsive force was torn open by his sharp head and easily broke through Shinra Tensei's defense. Go to hell. Green Pepper roared ferociously as he stood close to Dustless. He laughed hysterically, venting the depression in his heart. Just now, he had been mercilessly trampled by Dustless. It was like an adult violently beating up a child. His dignity was swept to the ground. When Dustless was about to be smashed into a pool of meat, the void suddenly splashed with golden light, and a large arm completely formed by special energy swept across. Boom. At the moment when it was about to touch Dustless, even the sharp head had touched Dustless's hair and was about to drill his head into brain, it was suddenly swept away by the golden fist. Boom boom boom, Green Pepper once again flew out bitterly. Coincidentally, the same scene as before, he directly smashed a large building into a pile of rubble and buried himself deep in it. Desperately may be able to make up for the gap in strength, but you and I are indeed dimensional monsters. No matter how hard you work, how desperately you fight, it will be useless in front of Consisinu. Dustless said lightly. The indifference in his words was as if he was drinking tea. At the same time, behind his body, the golden shadow gradually condensed and turned into a golden giant with a terrible face. The golden light shrouded the sky and covered the earth. The exaggerated height made people despair. If they wanted to fight this giant head-on, they had to at least be as tall as him. Otherwise it would be like drawing water with a bamboo basket. Chapter 626. The mighty and extraordinary giant covered Dustless. The simple and heavy armor was clearly visible, covering the giant's body. However, this giant was obviously not at its peak state. It was more like a miniature version. Some of its limbs were obviously incomplete. But even so, her exaggerated figure still made people feel terrified and hopeless. The evil golden light was beyond imagination. Under the cover of the light, one would feel suffocated. The mighty and extraordinary iron fist was enough to smash a large mountain. Can you stand up this time? But it seems that you can't. Dustless sighed as Green Pepper under the ruins did not move. He had tried his best to control Consisinu's strength. He was hoping that this strong old man could play for a while, but it seemed that Dustless thought too much. Kaka? There was a throbbing sound from the ruins and then it collapsed one after another. Then Green Pepper could be seen crawling out of it. He was in a mess and his whole body was bleeding. His bloody appearance was as if he had just run out of a pool full of blood. It's really scary to look like this. It seems that you still want to continue to fight. Why don't you just lie on the ground and wait for me to put the iron cuffs on you, and then escort you to Impel Down? Dustless sighed in distress. There was a world of difference between them, but he still struggled and suffered physical pain. Why should he ask for it? How can I just stand there and wait to be captured? This old man also has a dream. Boom boom boom. Before Green Pepper's voice fell, the golden rainbow fell from the sky and forcibly suppressed him. The bright light mercilessly crushed Green Pepper's huge body, pressing him into the ground. Kaka? Unable to withstand the brutal force, the ground constantly cracked and trembled. The huge cracks crazily swallowed the surrounding ground, mercilessly destroying the surrounding environment. After a while, the golden light condensed and formed, revealing Dustless's figure, his eyes indifferently looking at Green Pepper under his feet. His eyes were as cold as ice. People who talk about dreams are people who have the same strength. Before you talk about dreams in front of me, you should first think about how to escape from Impel Down. Don't talk like this, it's just a joke. Dustless's words were like a thorn that pierced deeply into Green Pepper's heart. His eyes were locked onto Dustless's face, as if he wanted to engrave that cold face of his into his heart forever. The look in your eyes. Is that a silent protest? Dustless asked as he stared at Green Pepper's eyeballs, which were about to pop out of their sockets. Hearing this, Kon Shinjo seemed to have accepted his fate. He removed the armament hockey state, revealing his bloody body. Between his words, he was exhausted. I used to hear that the new Marine Admiral was a monster. I always thought it was an exaggeration. Now it seems that it is not a lie. Gasping, Don Chinjo said inexplicably. Dustless couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, indifferently looking at Don Chinjo under his feet. What do you want to say? He always felt that this guy's words had a hidden meaning. Don Chinjo's eyes were vaguely sneering, which made Dustless's eyes flash fiercely. A mere stray dog dares to be so arrogant. Ka ka ka. With a sudden force on one foot, there was a crisp roar. Dustless mercilessly stepped on Don Chinjo's head. His originally sharp head was once again stepped back to its original shape by Dustless. He turned back to the bald man of the past. If that's the case, you should be more obedient. If not, I don't mind adding some more meat. Dustless sneered as he looked at Don Chinjo's limbs with cold eyes. Boom boom boom. The sound of countless cannons suddenly spread, and the sea around Sabaody was densely packed with pirates, mercilessly shelling the entire Sabaody archipelago. Indiscriminate shelling covered the entire island. Ordinary civilians are also being targeted. Seeing this, Dustless slightly frowned. This intensive shelling, including the ordinary civilians who were not involved, was also involved in this huge shelling. Aware that his head returned to its original shape, Don Chinjo's killing intent rose, and he was about to fight with Dustless again, but the stinging pain all over his body made him grimace in pain. He intended to resist, but he couldn't launch a sneak attack. Civilians? So what? This old man is a pirate, not a marine. Don Chinjo sneered. As a pirate, he only has himself in his eyes. There is no need to worry about the life and death of others. This is the most basic principle of being a pirate. Stubborn resistance. Don Chinjo hopelessly glanced at Don Chinjo. If he didn't guess wrong, those battleships that shelled the Sabaody archipelago were Don Chinjo's subordinates, or pirates attached to them. Leave it to me, just freeze all of them. At this moment, Kazan's slightly tired voice came, and his tone was full of exhaustion. Dustless's face was full of doubts. Kazan's strength was almost the same as an admiral, but his tired appearance and even the corners of his clothes had many holes. It was obvious that he had encountered a top powerhouse. Your state. What the hell is going on? Hell King, Rayleigh should be restrained by Sakazuki. Staring at the slightly embarrassed Kazan, Dustless was puzzled. On this island, only Hell King Rayleigh is a top powerhouse. In the future, when he was old, he could fight Kizaru, and now he is still young. Naturally, he can fight Admiral. Kazan's expression was stiff, and there was a flash of embarrassment. He scratched his head and said, "Suddenly a guy with a red nose attacked me. That guy's ability is very strange. His body can split into 4 or 5 parts." Thinking of that strange ability, Kazan was quite surprised. Red nose? Split into 4 or 5 parts. This time it was Dustless's face that was strange, a red nose that split into 4 or 5 parts. This is obviously the great god Bucky. Then on second thought, Dustless was relieved. Anyway, he was also a crew member of One Piece and had been through hundreds of battles. It was normal for him to hide his strength and scheme. The crew members who used to follow the Pirate King were all first-class experts. The last time he rode on Bucky's battleship, Dustless vaguely felt that there was something wrong with the old guy. Chapter 627. Although he doesn't understand what Buggy's purpose is, judging from the treachery of the world government, the Gorosei will never arrange a weak clown as Shichibukai, for no reason. There must be some unknown secret in it. After hearing Kazan's words, Dustless suddenly realized that the situation around Buggy the clown was indeed somewhat illogical. Watertight is not an unintentional mistake. Sometimes it is because it is too perfect that mistakes are made. Dustless saw this epitome in Buggy the clown now. Perfection is also a failure. Boom! Harsh explosions rang out, and the sea around the Sabaody archipelago was bombarded by a large number of pirate ships, and the civilians of the Sabaody archipelago fled like rats crossing the street. Hey, it's really troublesome. I thought it would be a pleasant task. These pirates are really tricky. Looking far away, Akiji saw that the distant sea was full of battleships, and he quickly swept over. He only needed to use his Ice Age on the sea to freeze the surrounding sea, and these pirates would be like turtles in a jar. It's a pity? Dustless looked down at Don Chinjo and said abruptly. Don Chinjo's face was black, and he simply ignored the existence of Dustless and buried his old face in the ground. It seems that the monotonous ground is better than Dustless's face. Seeing this, Dustless just smiled. Your apprentice beat the celestial dragons and robbed the devil fruit auctioned by Charles Ross. If he was caught, I don't need to say it. You know what the end would be. It's lucky to be executed directly. Dustless said. The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener took it seriously. Green Pepper's old face changed subtly. Of course, it's the luckiest thing to be executed directly. With the cruelty of the celestial dragons, it's normal to cut him into pieces and then throw him into the sea to feed the sea kings. Dustless continued to add fuel to the fire. Celestial dragons are arrogant and look down on everyone. In their eyes, humans are just inferior creatures. To put it bluntly, humans all over the world are their entertainment. Although it sounds a bit exaggerated, the world of celestial dragons is like this. What are you trying to say? Green Pepper asked in an unfriendly manner. Every time Dustless talked about the habits of the celestial dragons, Cone Green Pepper's heart became more and more depressed. Once his disciple was captured alive, he would inevitably be dismembered by the furious celestial dragons. In fact, what I want to say is very simple: obey me and I have something for you to do. If not, I will give your apprentice to the celestial dragons and you can imagine the end. If you are willing to obey me in the future, I will let you go safe and sound, and so will your apprentices. Dustless smiled evilly, full of coercion. When Don Chinjo was in his heyday, he was a big pirate with a bounty of more than 500 million berries. His strength was self-evident. Garp needed to personally deal with him. He fought with ease. Dustless's current subordinates, except for Hawkeye who can suppress him, it is estimated that no one is his opponent. Although Doflamingo was strong, it was still some distance away from its peak. Are you threatening me? Don Chinjo asked angrily. Golden waves swept out, and the suffocating Haushikohaki was oppressive and suffocating. I am indeed threatening you. Dustless smiled happily and frankly admitted it. Between life and death, choosing the wrong choice would mean stepping into hell. Choosing the right choice would allow one to ascend to the heavens. It all depended on how one chose. My apprentice hit the celestial dragons. Even if you are a marine admiral, you can't pardon them. Don Chinjo did not refuse but chose to retort. The identity of a marine admiral is scary enough, but he is still a lackey for the celestial dragons. Even some pirates in the New World ridiculed the marine admiral as the most loyal lackey of the celestial dragons. Where the celestial dragons are on fire, the marine admiral is responsible for extinguishing the fire there. Is it? What if I am also a celestial dragon? Dustless asked jokingly. To some extent, the law of the world is built according to the will of the celestial dragons to satisfy their selfish desires and have great power. Even if a few pirates are released, it doesn't matter. Nonsense. Do you think this old man is a 3-year-old child? The whole world knows that the celestial dragons are incompetent straw bags. His eyes widened, and the words that came to his mouth stopped abruptly. Don Chinjo looked at the corner of Dustless's torn clothes in horror. You are really a celestial dragon? Are you kidding me? Aren't they all incompetent straw bags? His rolling eyes suddenly lost their focus and was replaced by shock, and then he took a deep breath. Don Chinjo looked at Dustless's exposed coat. The uniform that only a celestial dragon dares to wear is not fake. Pretending to be a celestial dragon? The entire world government has been around for more than 800 years, and no one has been so bold. How about? Agree to my conditions and go to heaven. Refuse me? It's not impossible, but you have to be prepared in advance that your apprentice will be torn to pieces. Dustless said with a smile. Don Chinjo's old face turned green when he heard this. He was completely in a passive state and could only follow Dustless's nose. If he refuses, the apprentice who attacked the celestial dragons will be finished at any time. Agree? This is naturally even more impossible. He was beaten by Dustless, and now he has to beg for mercy in front of him. Don Chinjo's arrogant self-esteem can't stand it and he can't accept it. For a time he was in a dilemma. It was like a person suddenly beating you up and then using despicable means to make you be his obedient son. Moreover, it was the kind that you had to be. Aggrieved, uncomfortable, unwilling, hatred. All kinds of expressions solidified on Don Chinjo's face. For a moment he almost vomited blood. He has never felt so resentful in his life. As an admiral of the marine, how can you be so despicable? Don Chinjo asked angrily. In his heart he was so angry that he cursed. This kind of person should be killed by a heavenly punishment. The marine who boasted of absolute justice unexpectedly produced such a shameless and dirty villain like Dustless. God is simply blind. Chapter 628. Green Pepper's heart wavered and he was in a dilemma. He could not swallow the humiliation of being Wu Chen's lackey. He had been slapped in the face, yet he still had to bow down like a grandson. He could not swallow this humiliation. Zhuiji Green Pepper was also a world-famous great thief. How could he be willing to accept this? However, if he didn't obey Dustless, only death awaited him. The cruelty and coldness of the celestial dragons was well known to the world. Things that they fancied would be snatched by coercive means. Now that Charles fancied his apprentice, there was no other way except to be torn to pieces by the exposed celestial dragons. Are you still hesitating? My time waits for no one. Wasting other people's time for no reason is tantamount to murder for money. Seeing Green Pepper's face twitching, Dustless said softly, "If you refuse my conditions, I don't mind calling that fat pig Chalmers here right now, and I'll cut you into pieces in front of your face." Dustless smiled devilishly. The cold smile hanging on the corner of his mouth was particularly horrifying, making one's scalp tingle. You devil," Green Pepper said in a trembling voice. Wu Chen's cruel and callous appearance was obviously not a joke. Only the word demon could replace him. If one offended someone like Wu Chen, they would be in a situation where they could neither live nor die. Speed decides, "I don't have time to listen to your nonsense." After spending half a day, Dustless also lost his patience. Green Pepper heard this and quickly exchanged glances. After thinking hard, he finally nodded heavily. As the saying goes, a bad life is better than a good death. In addition, he also didn't want his disciple, who had followed him for a lifetime, to be brutally dismembered by the celestial dragons and fed to the sea kings. "You know your place," Dustless said leisurely as he withdrew his foot from Green Pepper's back. Green Pepper's strength couldn't be underestimated. He was at the level of a general. Such a powerful person was the subordinate that Dustless needed at the moment. It was perfect to use him to carry out some secret missions. "It wasn't easy for this old man to recover my head, but it's been beaten back to its original form again," Green Pepper said in distress as he rubbed his head. This was the most tragic thing in life. After being beaten up, he could only swallow his anger. What was even more tragic was that he had become the other party's underling. He suddenly felt that all the bad luck in the world had fallen on his head. Allah Allah Allah. It's a group of vicious murderers. If I don't take care of you, the marshal won't let me off easily. On the shore of the Sabaody archipelago, Kazan frowned. Pirates were hateful, and this group of people who slaughtered weak civilians were even more hateful in Kazan's eyes. Bullying the weak and fearing the strong was also the type of people he hated the most. With a leap, 2 icicles extended from his arms and smashed into the sea. "I say on." As Kazan's voice fell, the entire surface of the sea suddenly froze into ice. The ice quickly spread in all directions and froze the entire sea in an instant. The boundless area was stupefying, and the rumbling of the cannons stopped abruptly. This old man has seen that little devil before. Dustless and Don Chinjo were secretly watching the movements on the sea. Don Chinjo recognized Kazan at a glance. When he fought with Garp, he was there. His superb freezing ability was world famous. "I've never seen a pirate flag. Where did this clown come from?" Eyebrows slightly raised, Dustless puzzled. At first he thought that this was Don Chinjo's subordinates, but now it seems that he thought too much. A pirate flag that he had never seen before was obviously a passerby type. There are many people in the Sabaody archipelago. This old man only brought a few apprentices. Before, I said that I would bombard the Sabaody archipelago, but this old man was just fooling the Marines. Don Chinjo said proudly. The apprentices who came with him had been secretly arranged to leave. Don Chinjo was wearing large black handcuffs. Before, he had beaten Dustless to the point where he couldn't fight back. Naturally, he couldn't just let him go. He needed the right opportunity. The mission has been completed. Only this group of minions is left. His eyes swept straight into the distance. The frozen ships in front of them could no longer move. They were like turtles in a jar. They could be annihilated anytime and anywhere. The distance is quite far. Let me send you on your way. This lonely and boring mission should be over. Wu Chen's eyes turned, emitting a clear and cold light. Suddenly, several green spheres floated behind him. It was very mysterious. At the same time, Dustless's body also changed and was swallowed by an emerald light. If you can die under this move, you can rest in peace in the underworld. When his voice fell, several green beads behind him floated in front of Dustless and then strangely liquefied, turning into a bright golden light condensed in Dustless's right hand. Don Chinjo's pupils suddenly shrank. Although the light in Dustless's hand was very small, it gave him an unprecedented sharpness. It seemed that the whole world could be split. Stop here. His arms suddenly raised high and pointed to a large number of frozen pirate ships in the distance. Immediately, without hesitation, The light in his hand extended countless times in an instant. Golden wheel reincarnation explosion. An earth-shattering beam of light swept out. The endless light ignored distance. In front of it, even the ends of the earth would be useless. They would still be within the attack range. Boom, 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 the light beam slashed down and the dense pirate group in the distance was suddenly annihilated. The whole sea was horribly split open with a gap of tens of kilometers. It was boundless. Gulp. Don Chinjo was stunned and swallowed his saliva. His eyes flashed with fear and dissatisfaction. He felt a chill down his spine. He knew that this was Dustless's demonstration in disguise. If he wanted to be lucky, even if he was at the end of the earth, he would be killed by this unprecedented move. Really, I tried my best to hold back, but he still created such a large-scale attack. It really is a difficult technique to control. Dustless was quite depressed. Chapter 629. Trying to hold back, not going all out? Green Pepper's old face turned green. Dense black lines hung on his forehead. He cursed in his heart as the corners of his mouth twitched. He clenched his teeth tightly to prevent himself from being killed by Dustless if he roared out loud. This guy is too annoying. Not only did he destroy all the pirates in one move, but he also said that he was trying to hold back, not going all out. Especially Dustless's reluctant look made Don Chinjo uncomfortable, and he couldn't help but feel injustice for the group of people who were killed by Dustless. Killing all the pirates of others, but in the end, he looked like he was wronged and couldn't exert his full strength. It was really despicable. Don Chinjo shook his head. Maybe after his subordinates and himself were killed, Dustless would have the same expression. In that case, it would be too unfair to die. Looking straight ahead, the sea that was frozen by Akiji before had a giant crack of tens of kilometers in length. The whole sea was strangely separated and couldn't heal. This incredible scene was scary. Worthy of being the youngest admiral. Kazan ran over and flattered with a smile on his face. It seemed that only the smile on his face could hide the shock deep in his face. This shocking attack was beyond the imagination of the world. Even if the Pirate King came back from the dead, he may not be able to do such a terrible thing. Kazan felt a chill run down his spine when he thought of the several dozen kilometer-long crack in the sea. He looked at the scattered sea surface with fear and trepidation. If it hit a person, that guy Sakazuki doesn't seem to be done yet. But that's right, the opponent is Rayleigh, he should be suppressed miserably. Kazan chuckled and there was a hint of schadenfreude. Water and fire are two elements that are difficult to coexist, and Kazan and Sakazuki are quite incompatible now. The ideas of the two were completely opposite. In order to maintain the rule of the government, Sakazuki could sacrifice anyone. Compared to the benevolent and lazy Kazan, it was a world of difference. It was also destined that the two would have sparks in some areas. I don't think he's much better. Nether King is still young and full of energy. Sakasuji might not be his match. Dustless analyzed, his eyes sparkling. When the king of the underworld, Rayleigh, fought against the young Sakasuji, Wuchen did not think that the latter's chances of winning were high. Sakasuji might be able to defeat Rayleigh during the War of the Underworld, but he was still too young. As the vice-captain of One Piece, Rayleigh's strength is beyond doubt. He definitely has the strength of an admiral. On the other hand, Sakazuki is still a vice-admiral. Although he has the strength of an admiral, he still has a long way to go to defeat Rayleigh. As for Don Chinjo, he was already escorted to the battleship by the Marines. The route was naturally to Impel Down. A big pirate like Don Chinjo was either executed or escorted to Impel Down. However, Dustless had already secretly prepared something for him to escape. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, another 4 hours passed quietly. The sun had already set, and the fiery red clouds of dawn covered the world. The seawater was exceptionally beautiful. What are you looking at? Haven't you seen me injured? In the temporary tent, Sakasuji roared in a hoarse voice. He always felt that these marine soldiers were looking at him strangely. His temper was already quite irritable, so he suddenly roared. Dustless looked at Sakasuji playfully. If he could, he would have taken a picture of him right now. His crimson suit was full of holes, and there were clear bloodstains on his arms. There were some bloodstains at the corner of his mouth. The flamboyant corsage he wore was also half burnt. No wonder Sakasuji was so pissed. That damn old man is as strong as a sea king. Sakasuji showed a rare look of shock. Rayleigh's powerful physical strength was beyond his imagination. In terms of physical strength, only the Marines' hero Garp could beat Rayleigh. Dustless nodded undeniably and then said, "Don't worry about Rayleigh. That guy has retired from the world. If we don't take the initiative to provoke him, he shouldn't take the initiative to trouble us." Kazan and Sakasugi also nodded. The reason why they met Rayleigh this time was because Sakasugi was on a whim. As a result, they were suppressed by the young and energetic Rayleigh. The current 3 admirals are still weak, and there is a gap between them and the future. Otherwise they would be equal to Rayleigh. The task given by Sengoku has been completed. You go back to the Marine headquarters. I should go back to Mariewa. Hearing this, Sakasugi and Kazan both showed envious eyes. As a celestial dragon, Dustless moved freely and unrestrained. He was much more leisurely than their busy officers. They couldn't find the right time to be lazy. After about an hour or so, the entire Sabaody archipelago finally returned to quiet, and the big and small pirates were cleaned up. During this period, Charo's sister, the female celestial dragon Shalulia, came to ask for Don Chinjo and others. As a result, she was collared by Dustless in a strange way. In the end, she ran away crying in fear. She didn't even have time to take off the collar on her neck. Wu Chen's reputation was in disarray. He could really do such a crazy thing to find a female celestial dragon as a slave. Dustless was helpless. At night, a biting cold wind blew from the sea, and the marine battleship escorting Don Chinjo quickly sneaked away. "Are you finally here? I'm dying of anxiety. Impel Down is not a place for people to stay." On the mast, Don Chinjo, who was shackled with iron chains, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at White Zetsu, who suddenly appeared in front of him. He was really afraid that Dustless would play with him and take him to Impel Down. In that kind of dark place, it is extremely difficult to breathe. "Dustless, Sama will not forget what he promised you." Glancing at Don Chinjo, White Zetsu opened the iron shackles that bound Don Chinjo. Chapter 630. Don Chinjo nodded ecstatically and then jumped into the sea without hesitation. White Zetsu's clone had been waiting for a long time to pick him up on a boat. It has to be said that the quality of the marine soldiers trained by Sengoku was good. Hearing the sound of falling into the water, a large group of Marines quickly ran out of the cabin and looked at Don Chinjo, who had disappeared. Many smart Marines knew that Don Chinjo did not escape. They used lights to illuminate the entire sea. Don Chinjo disappeared in an instant and they picked up guns to attack him. However, the effect was negligible. Things like guns and cannons are just an insignificant itch for pirates who have more than 500 million berries. Wanting to hurt Don Chinjo is a fantasy, tantamount to a fool's dream. The #1 criminal of the Marine ran away. This crime must be carried by someone. Sengoku naturally can't blame Dustless. This matter has nothing to do with him, not to mention he is a celestial dragon, so he can only say, "What are you two doing?" The next morning, in the Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral's office, Sengoku's angry roar resounded. At this moment, Kazan and Sakazuki were being mercilessly scolded by Sengoku. It must be their turn to carry the blame. A living Don Chinjo ran away. "Because of you two, the Marine will be labeled as incompetent," Sengoku said while staring at Sakazuki and Kazan. If Don Chinjo was an ordinary criminal, it wouldn't be a big deal. With such an unprecedented strength, there is no doubt about the destruction he made. What made Sengoku gloomy the most is that he spent a lot of money to ask Wu Chen to come out, but in the end, Don Chinjo ran away. The Marine headquarters didn't even get a chicken feather in the end, and because of Don Chinjo's escape, they will be labeled as incompetent and useless. Just thinking about it made Sengoku's stomach ache. It's ridiculous. How did that guy do it? I remember to lock him in handcuffs and shackles, and because I was worried, I tied his whole body with a special iron chain. Kazan was puzzled. Sakazuki frowned and nodded. Obviously, he also had deep doubts about this accident. The cooked duck flew away. It was more uncomfortable than eating 10 pounds of flies. Did I deliberately let him go? Sengoku rolled his eyes and asked with an angry smile. Waving his hand, Sengoku was too lazy to waste his breath. Don Chinjo has run away, and it's useless to reprimand Kazan and Sakazuki. After a while, I can authorize the 3 to be admiral. Sengoku secretly decided. If it wasn't for the unexpected incident in the Sabaody archipelago, Borsellino and the others might have already been marine admirals. Now that Don Chinjo suddenly appeared and disappeared, Sakazuki and Kazan's perfect achievements left a stain. Rashly being promoted to admiral will definitely be a problem. Naturally, Sakazuki and Kazan. Okay, you can go back. Sengoku tiredly ordered them to leave. For a moment, he gave people the feeling that he was older by more than 10 years, and they could vaguely see the white hair on his temples. Suddenly, they felt that taking over the position of Marine Fleet Admiral was the biggest mistake in their life. Sakasugi and Kazan did not waste any more words and turned to leave. Angering the fuming marshal was akin to setting fire to himself. Seeing Sakazuki and Kazan leave, Sengoku's face suddenly began to turn gloomy again. In fact, he also believed in the two. Sakazuki and Kazan, as well as Borsellino, were his confidants. Damn bastard, don't let me know who did it in the end if not. With a snort, Sengoku's killing intent soared into the sky. Mariehua. Compared with the depressed Sengoku, Dustless was much more relaxed, basking in the sun leisurely and in a good mood. The plans at hand were carried out perfectly according to his plan. The first was Doflamingo, who became the king of Dressrosa. Although the kid's means were extremely bloody, the effect was good. He easily controlled the wind direction of the whole Dressrosa, completely led public opinion in his direction, and poured all the dirty water on the former King Luke. During this period, several pirates rashly invaded Dressrosa and were annihilated by Doflamingo's overwhelming strength, which encouraged the civilians who had been tortured by pirates for a long time, and Doflamingo's prestige also improved a lot. Those fools are really easy to deceive. Doflamingo just found a few actors and fooled them. After listening to White Zetsu's report, Dustless, who was leisurely basking in the sun, was speechless. The so-called invading pirates were actually actors hired by Doflamingo. However, such a simple trick worked amazingly and successfully eliminated the inner resistance of the residents of Dressrosa. How is the production of the artificial devil fruit going? Dustless asked. All the information about the bloodline factor has been sent to Caesar. The artificial devil fruit is progressing rapidly, and he heard that the finished product has recently come out. White Zetsu was suddenly in a dilemma. His eyebrows squeezed together, but he still gritted his teeth and said, "The finished product has come out, but there are still side effects for the time being. People who eat it will die in a few days." It's no wonder that White Zetsu is in a dilemma. This is far from Dustless's plan for mass production. But even so, the artificial devil fruit has been secretly sold by the black-hearted Doflamingo. Whether they live or die is not something he can control. Die in a few days after eating it? It has such an effect. Hearing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly. In his previous life, he didn't hear that the artificial devil fruit had such side effects. If he didn't know that Caesar was timid and sincerely attached to him, he would really think that this was a trick played by Caesar. Dustless nodded slightly. He also knew that he was too hasty. Scientific experiments can't be sloppy. The smallest mistake can lead to the collapse of the whole process. Enough time is needed to make up for it. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.